Chapter 141, Wang Yu's Concerns. Wang Yu, who had just been about to get to work, didn't know what to say after listening to Zhou Tingjian's complaints. What Sumu did at noon was similar to what he had done, but what she didn't expect was that Tiantian had already come into her bowl, and Zhou Tingjian didn't stand a chance at all. Now that Wang Yu knew both himself and his opponent, and Sumu had no idea that her thoughts had been revealed, he had the advantage in this situation, so how could he lose? Moreover, Zhou Tingjian is also a comrade in arms in his own trench. With careful planning, he will be able to win over Sumu. Even if Zhou Tingjian doesn't succeed, Sumu won't have time to harass him due to his long-term entanglement. On the other hand, I have been on guard against her advances. The two of them are completely on different levels, so this wave is stable. At that moment, Wang Yu told Zhou Tingjian not to care about what Sumu said, and then sent flowers, followed by a date. If he was free, he would go find Sumu and show his presence by her side. After hanging up the phone, Wang Yu started his work for the day, and Tiantian did not participate in Wang Yu's actions, not knowing that Sumu wanted to sell himself at noon. Busy until 4 p.m., after sending off the last customer, Wang Yu and Tiantian became idle. The little nurse was torn between staying and leaving. After all, Wang Yu was going to take her to Wen Xin's for dinner later. This kind of thing had never even crossed Sweetie's mind. What was going through her simple mind was that she liked Brother Yu, and Brother Yu liked her too, so the two of them could be together. As for other things, they were completely unexpected. What would happen in this situation of being taken to meet a girlfriend by her boyfriend? Would she be bullied and insulted? Seeing the little nurse's expression, Wang Yu also knew her worries. After carefully reassuring her, he took Tiantian off duty. As soon as they walked out of the hospital doors, Wang Yu saw Zhou Tingjian coming over with another bouquet of flowers. He was very supportive of this gentleman's perseverance and gave him a thumbs up in return. Zhou Tingjian was even more motivated when he saw Wang Yu's support. He nodded gratefully and strode proudly off to find Sumu. Wang Yu brought Tiantian directly to the warm home. When they arrived at the door, Tiantian was terrified. Wang Yu soothed her softly for a long time at the door, but it obviously didn't help. The little nurse shook her little head and just wouldn't go in. Wang Yu then directly took her hand, opened the door, and dragged her inside. When Xin and Wen Wan heard the sound of the door opening and saw Wang Yu dragging a small, delicate little girl in. The little girl kept her head down and didn't dare to look up, while Wen Wan rolled her eyes, waved her little fist at Wang Yu, and then went back to her room. When Xin looked at the ostrich-like Sweetie and suddenly felt funny, wondering if she was really that scary. She walked over at once, took Sweetie's hand, and led her to the sofa. Sweetie, who was holding hands, felt stiff and didn't dare to move a bit. She didn't know what would happen to her next, and always felt that she had been fooled by Wang Yu today. "Your name is Sweetie, right?" Wen Xin's tone was gentle and not at all accusatory. The little nurse obediently nodded. "How old are you?" 22. He was actually so much older than her, and he immediately turned his head and glared at Wang Yu. Then he gently stroked Sweetie's back, feeling that the little girl had really suffered by following Wang Yu so closely. He wondered how the guy had managed to trick her. "Sister, I didn't know that Brother Yu had a girlfriend. By the time I found out, I was already in love with him." Tiantian was still trying to explain something, but she didn't know how to continue after that sentence. "Well, it's okay, don't think so much, I won't blame you, sister. You'll understand after a while, this guy really can't do without women." Wen Xin sighed, not knowing if her decision was right or not. But now that she'd come this far, she definitely wouldn't leave Wang Yu, even if it wasn't for the sake of the baby in her belly, but also for the sake of her appearance. How long can a woman stay pretty? But if she follows Wang Yu, she can stay pretty forever. Which woman can resist this kind of attraction? Let's have dinner together later. I'll introduce you to the other two sisters when I have time. Wen Xin also had no experience in this kind of communication. When she communicated with Sun Qian before, the two women were very rational, while Wen had no thoughts of her own. As long as she could stay by Wang Yu's side, she would be satisfied. After seeing her today, I can rest assured. I was afraid that Wang Yu had brought back a girl with a heart of stone. Should we go out to eat or eat at home? After watching the two chat for a while, Wang Yu asked in a timely manner. "Let's eat at home. I asked the restaurant to deliver some more. There's no need to go out." After when Xin finished speaking, she asked Sweetie. "Is there anything you don't like?" "No." Tiantian shook her head and said. At this time, the three of them didn't know what to talk about. Tiantian was afraid to speak, Wen Xin didn't know what to say either, and although Wang Yu had a thick skin, he was embarrassed at this time and didn't want to show any intimacy with either of the two women. The atmosphere in the living room suddenly became a bit awkward. Wan, who was peeking in the bedroom, couldn't help but push the door open and walk out. She said to Tiantian, "Sister, I'm Wan. Can you come and help me?" She waved her hand at Tiantian. Although she was not sure of Wan's identity, Tiantian still felt that this girl, who was younger than her, was helping her, so she immediately followed Wan to her bedroom. When only Wang Yu and Wen Xin were left in the living room, the guy let out a sigh of relief. He sat down next to Wen Xin and directly put his arms around her. He first gave her a kiss on the cheek, and then tried to get physical, but after Wen Xin gave him a firm pinch, he calmed down. "Xiaoyu, have you found out what kind of family this girl comes from?" Wen Xin was a little worried that Sweetie's family would come to settle the score when they found out that their daughter had been cheated by Wang Yu. She felt that it was better to ask clearly to avoid any difficulties later. "I know that Sweetie only has a mother in her family. As for her father, she has never mentioned him." Wang Yu briefly introduced Sweetie's family situation, and some things were actually mentioned by Sweetie herself during their conversation today. However, Sweetie did not mention a single word about her father, and it was not clear whether he was dead or whether there were other hidden circumstances. "So when are you going to meet Sweetie's mother? After all, this kind of thing cannot be decided by the two of you just wanting it. If the mother cannot accept it, you have to consider Sweetie's feelings." Wen Xian's words gave Wang Yu a wake-up call. He really hadn't thought about how to tell Sweetie's mother about this. At the moment, he felt that he should not take Sweetie for granted. If Sweetie's mother did not agree, he still had to treat the relationship with caution. Chapter 142, The Wen brothers come to the door. At dinner, Wan pulled Sweetie out with her. At this point, the young nurse's mood had calmed down a lot. "I don't know what this little girl Wan said to her, but after they came out, Sweetie kept her head down and didn't dare to look at Wang Yu." After dinner, Wan and Sweetie went to Wan's room together, and they didn't come out until it was time to go to bed. Wang Yu had to sleep with a pillow all night. He was used to sleeping with a woman every night, so he slept very uneasily, always feeling like something was missing. Early the next morning, Wang Yu got up early. It was a day off, and through the window he could see that it was a beautiful day with clear skies and gentle breezes. The warm sunshine streaming through the window made Wang Yu feel a lot better. Although he had slept alone last night, the future was still long, and perhaps before long the four of them would be able to. Thinking about this, he couldn't help but laugh loudly a few times, before immediately getting up and preparing to make a good impression by personally cooking breakfast. Although his skills are limited, it is still a token of his sincerity. When the three women got up, they saw that in addition to the food delivered by Tianjian restaurant to Wan, there were also a few fried eggs, boiled eggs, and 4 bowls of poached eggs on the table. Wang Yu couldn't help blushing when she saw their gazes. At that time, she ran into the kitchen with high spirits, holding a knife in her left hand and a rolling pin in her right hand. After thinking for a long time, she realized that she couldn't cook anything except eggs. There was no other way, so he put down his weapons, took out a dozen eggs from the refrigerator, and did his best to come up with the 3 most basic ways to cook eggs. "So many eggs, are you trying to give us cholesterol?" Wan didn't give her Uncle Wang any face and accused him directly. "No, I just wanted to cook breakfast, but that's all I know how to do." Wang Yu felt very ashamed. "It's fine, it's not like it's a big deal to eat it once." Wen Xin saw Wang Yu's embarrassment and pulled Sweetie to sit at the table. She took an egg and started peeling the shell. Seeing Wen Xin give face like this, Wang Yu immediately went over to help, and it took 5 minutes to peel the shells of several eggs. However, the 3 women each ate one, and the rest were left untouched. After all, eating too much of this stuff can easily cause a blockage. Wang Yu, on the other hand, was not polite and directly swept each one away. As for the poached eggs and fried eggs, they were all eaten. After breakfast, Wan started tidying up on her own. Wang Yu used to do this, but since the little girl came, he was not allowed to do it anymore. Wang Yu originally wanted to take Tiantian out to buy something and then visit her at home. But the 3 women decided to go shopping together and left Wang Yu at home alone. He was doing nothing at home, lying on the sofa, waiting to call Sun Xian and Yuwen to go out to dinner at noon. He was lying on the sofa, checking his phone when he heard a knock on the door. Could it be that Tiantian and Yuan had come early? Thinking this, he quickly went to open the door. As soon as he opened it, he saw 3 men standing in the doorway, dressed in suits and looking extraordinary. One of them looked a bit familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him before. "Who are you looking for?" Wang Yu asked politely after surveying the men. The three men on the other side also surveyed Wang Yu for a while. His skin was indeed good, and he looked quite energetic, a proper pretty boy. However, if they had seen Wang Yu a few months ago, they would not have thought so. At that time, Wang Yu's skin was rough and a bit dark. Although he could be considered a handsome guy, he definitely could not be called a pretty boy. Since he started practicing the Huang denaging, not only has his physical fitness improved greatly, his skin has become fairer and fairer, and his overall temperament has also improved a lot. At present, he looks like a perfect handsome guy, otherwise Sumu and Tiantian would not have found it increasingly difficult to control themselves around him. Men like beautiful women, and that woman must also like handsome young men. "Are you Wang Yu?" The young man whom Wen Xin is supporting. The man leading the group looked at the man in front of him and spoke in an impolite tone. Hearing his words, Wang Yu's temper immediately flared. "You're not my sister, I haven't spent a dime on Wen Xin, and which eye of yours saw me as a young man?" This guy was immediately ready to chase someone away. For this kind of person who came to pick a fight, Wang Yu would not be polite at all. However, before he could start moving, the next sentence from the leading man made him stop moving. "I am Wen Xin's cousin. I came to see her about something." Relative? Wang Yu thought so and let the few people come inside the house. After all, they were Wen Xin's relatives. As her man, he would endure for now and give his woman face. After the few people sat down, he still politely made tea, but the three men obviously didn't like him very much. After seeing this guy being scolded for being a little white face and then actively pouring tea, they looked down on Wang Yu even more. After sitting down and drinking tea, he didn't say a word, surveying the house. The more he looked, the more his brow furrowed. Living in this kind of house at Wen Xin's price was really a disgrace to the Wen family. Seeing the situation was a bit awkward, Wang Yu couldn't help but ask, "I don't know how to address you three." Hearing Wang Yu's words, Wen Jia's eldest brother didn't bother to respond to him, and signaled Wen Zhou to come forward and explain. After Wen Zhou received his eldest brother's signal, he briefly introduced the relationship between the three brothers and Wen Xin. This guy still doesn't know that what happened between him and Wen Liang that day was broadcast live to Wang Yu. Wen K, Wen Xin's cousin. Wen Da. Wen Xin's cousin. Wen Zhou. Wen Xin's cousin. The first two names didn't sound like anything to Wang Yu, but when he introduced himself, Wen Zhou noticed that Wang Yu's eyes were clearly avoiding and afraid. He thought that after learning the identities of the three brothers, the guy was afraid. But he guessed correctly, Wang Yu was indeed a little afraid of him. After hearing Wen Zhou's name, he realized why he felt that this guy looked familiar just now. It turned out that he was Wen Zhou, the gentleman who was lying on the bed that night. He almost didn't recognize him when he got dressed. Thinking about Wen Zhou's perverted preferences, Wang Yu felt a wave of discomfort in his stomach. After the introduction, Wang Yu more or less guessed the purpose of the Wen family's visit, which was most likely for money. Although Wen Xin had not told them about these things, Wang Yu more or less knew a little. However, this was Wen Xin's family matter, and Wang Yu didn't want to say anything, as saying too much would make him seem like he was coveting Wen Xin's wealth. When the Wen brothers came, they had already investigated Wang Yu to the bottom of the sky and knew everything about him, even his affair with Wen Liang. The only thing that was a bit different was how he and Wen Xin met. They had thought that Wen Xin had met Wang Yu when she went to the hospital to help her father deliver the herb to the Yang family. Chapter 143, Wealth and Position Move People's Hearts. After the investigation, it was also discovered that Wang Yu did not deliberately approach Wen Xin because of Wen Liang's relationship with Chen Yuding. The two of them could only be said to have met by coincidence, and as for what happened next, it was easy to understand. As Wen Liang's adoptive mother, knowing what he did, coupled with his relationship with Wang Yu, it was not difficult to understand why he had thrown Wen Liang out of the house. But the fact that this guy actually got Wen Xin pregnant with his child made it so that his grudges with Wen Liang didn't matter anymore. When Wen Zhou came back from this trip and brought back the news that Wen Xin had a boyfriend and was pregnant, these people from the second room of the Wen family couldn't sit still. But since he didn't see it with his own eyes, he only heard it from Chen Yuding, and after that, he asked Wen Liang, but this guy didn't even answer. After all, no one would give their wealth to outsiders. Before, Wen Xin was alone, and the entire Wen family only interacted with their own family. After she retired, the Wen group in Nan'an City naturally fell into their hands. Even if Wen Xin controls the most shares, she is not afraid. As long as she gets someone from her family into the Wen group to take power, many things will be much easier to handle. Wen Xin, did you really ruin your child? Wen K asked coldly. Hearing Wen K's words, Wang Yu did not sense his cousin's concern for his cousin, and his brows furrowed slightly as he replied. Well, I'm pregnant with twins, 2 boys. Wang Yu has always been very happy about this. After all, when Wen Xin got pregnant with his 2 children, he had not yet obtained the child-giving supernatural power, and it was purely natural conception. After hearing Wang Yu's reply, the expressions of the brothers all changed. They looked at Wang Yu as if they had seen their father's murderer, and Wang Yu could clearly feel the coldness in their gazes. Damn it! They must have thought that I was relying on the children to compete for wealth. I'm a man, would I do such a thing? As he thought this, Wang Yu felt that he needed to assure the 3 of them that he would never spend Wen Xin's money, and that he would not try to take over the Wen group. After all, those things are all reserved for his 2 sons. How can a father go and steal his son's things? When his sons grow up and want a filial piety to buy him something, that's another story. Good boy. After holding back for a long time, Wen K said these 3 words. The other 2 brothers could feel the anger in their eldest brother's heart at the moment. What they had thought was a sure thing had been taken away by this guy. Even if they killed Wang Yu now, it would be useless. This pretty boy was no longer important. What was important was the child in Wen Xin's belly. However, Wen K didn't plan to let Wang Yu go for so long. His own plan was ruined by this guy. If it wasn't for him, how would Wen Xin get pregnant? No, this guy must be destroyed first, otherwise, even if the child in Wen Xin's belly is gotten rid of, there's no guarantee that the 2 of them won't have another one. Wen K closed his eyes slightly and thought for a long time, as if he had made an important decision. He said to Wang Yu, "You'd better stay away from Wen Xin." After saying that, he left with his 2 younger brothers, and he didn't want to be here anymore after receiving the confirmation. After all, even if Wen Xin came back, what could he do? Could he personally do something to her? He was just a cousin, and there were some things that he was not suitable to do. But in his heart, he had already sentenced the child in Wen Xin's belly to death. Since it had not yet been born, it should not be born. As for Wang Yu, Wen K didn't care at all. He was just a doctor who had recently become famous, and he could make him disappear from the world with a little trickery. As he watched the 3 people leave, Wang Yu didn't know about their sinister thoughts, but he felt that they knew about the fact that he had several girlfriends. As Wen Xin's relative, this reaction was also very reasonable. At least if Chunmei was pregnant and her husband had other women on the side, Wang Yu would definitely not let it go, and he would at least give him a good beating. Thinking about this, Wang Yu couldn't help but frown. Would these guys just leave like this, and would it be bad for Wen Xin? Hey! She generally doesn't tell me about her affairs. The most they talk about together is Wen Xin's mother. As for the rest of her family, she hasn't mentioned any of them. Hey! This is quite a dilemma. But if these 3 really have any intentions towards their woman, then it's not Wen Xin's family affair anymore. After leaving, Wen's 3 brothers sat in the car without saying a word. When Zhou was driving, and he had only come this time to confirm the news, so he didn't bring his subordinates. Big brother, what should we do next? After a moment of silence, Wendy couldn't help but speak. That little white face, 3rd brother, you find someone to get rid of him. As for Wen Xin, after we get back, we'll plan it out. Although she is an illegitimate daughter, she is after all the daughter of our eldest uncle, and we must deal with her without anyone finding out. Don't worry, big brother, I'm very interested in that little white face. I think instead of getting rid of him, it's better to buy him off, and that way it will be easier for us to deal with Wen Xin. Thinking about Wang Yu's handsome appearance and his strong physique, Wen Zhong was really tempted, and couldn't bear to let this person just be wasted. It is better to let him follow you, so that you will not waste that good-looking body. As for whether Wang Yu is willing or not, he never considered it at all. After catching him, there are ways to deal with him. Lao San, as long as you can get rid of Wang Yu, I don't care about the specific method, it would be better if you can subdue him. Then you can use him to drug Wen Xin. When things explode, it has nothing to do with us, and even if the people in the main room know, they can't trace it back to us. Wen K suddenly felt that it was better to make good use of Wang Yu than to get rid of him. After all, if something really happened to Wen Xin in the end, this guy would be a good scapegoat. While the 3 Wen brothers discussed how to deal with Wen Xin and Wang Yu, Wen Xin had already bought gifts and visited Sweetie's house with Sweetie. Last night, thanks to Wan's participation, the group had a long chat and said a lot of things. Wen Xin is becoming more and more fond of this girl, Sweetie, especially since she spends every day with Wang Yu and knows all about him. She wants Sweetie to develop into her own little spy, keeping a close eye on Wang Yu's contact with other women. If they encounter anyone who has designs on Wang Yu, they will investigate them thoroughly. Arriving at Sweetie's house, Wen Xin and Sweetie's mother, Zhenzhen, chat casually. It can be seen that Zhenzhen is very happy to see her daughter bring a friend home. Sister, you have such good skin, how old are you? Zhenzhen looked at Wen Xin and asked enviously. Auntie Mu, I'm 45 this year. Oh, 45. Wait, I heard you right. The smile on Zhenzhen's face froze for a moment as she carefully sized up Wen Xin. Really 45? Yes, Auntie, my mom really is 45. Wan said playfully when she saw the look on Zhenzhen's face. Chapter 144 Zhenzhen's envy. Zhenzhen couldn't believe it. Wen Xin was 45 years old this year. You have to know that she is only 2 years older than Wen Xin. But when the two of them are compared together, it feels like she is at least 20 years older. Hearing Wan call Wen Xin her mother, Zhenzhen was completely disoriented. During the rest of the conversation, Zhenzhen seemed a little distracted. No matter how old a woman is, she cares a lot about her appearance. When Zhenzhen was young, she was also a bona fide beauty. Even though she is now 47 years old and has wrinkles on her face, she is still very beautiful compared to her peers. But after learning about Wen Xin's age, she didn't even want to compare. She was completely outclassed. The woman in front of her, who called herself her sister, looked no worse than her own daughter even when standing together. Wen sister, I'm sorry, I just can't believe that you're still maintaining such good health at your age. Wen didn't react much to Zhenzhen's transformation. After all, she knew exactly how she had become so young. Sister Mu is also very beautiful now, and you can't tell she's in her 40s at all. The two women thus began to exchange business compliments, but what Zhenzhen said was from the heart. And as the chairman of a large group, Wen could easily come up with such polite things off the cuff. After chatting for a while, the women felt that it was about time to go, so they said their goodbyes. Tiantian had wanted to go with them, but Wen Xin had asked her to stay and keep her mother company, so she had to stay behind. After seeing Wen Xin and Wan off, Tiantian's mother took her daughter into the house and started asking questions. Daughter, how do you know them? And why didn't you come home last night? Tiantian felt a little embarrassed when she heard her mother's questions. Although she hadn't slept in the same bed as Wang Yu last night, she had slept in his house after all. Last night I was a guest at Sister Wen's house, and we had a long chat, so I fell asleep there. As for how I met him, Sweetie didn't say. She didn't know how to explain this to her mother. Thinking about her father's departure, Sweetie didn't dare to tell her mother about her affair with Wang Yu, and she lowered her head, not knowing what to think. Seeing her daughter inexplicably blushing and not daring to lift her head, as a mother she immediately noticed Sweetie's change. Sweetie, are you in love? Well, Sweetie didn't hide the fact that she was in love. After all, she was old enough to fall in love. Daughter, can you tell me what's going on? You've never been able to keep things to yourself since you were little, and you just met that Ms. Wen, right? Zhenzhen knew her daughter better than Sweetie knew herself. Looking at her like that, she knew that Wen Xin must have come here for a reason today. Otherwise, who would inexplicably bring gifts to a young girl's house and chat with her mother for so long? Knowing Wen Xin's age, and that Sweetie had admitted to being in love, and coupled with the fact that she had not returned home last night, Zhenzhen's first thought was that her daughter's boyfriend might be Wen Xin's junior. This would explain why he had brought her a gift. However, Zhenzhen still felt uncomfortable that Sweetie's boyfriend had not come over. The fact that she had to get her family involved showed that this guy was irresponsible. As for why her daughter had chosen such a boyfriend, Zhenzhen was also unsure, and immediately launched into questioning. Facing her mother's words, Sweetie was so nervous that she didn't know if her mother would stop her from being with Wang Yu if she told her everything. But she couldn't keep quiet about such things, and even if she hid it now, could she hide it forever? At that moment, Sweetie gathered her courage and decided that it was better to be honest about herself and Wang Yu. As for what her mother thought, that was not something she could control. If her mother stopped her from being with Wang Yu, Brother Yu had said that he would let her rest assured, so she would let Brother Yu figure it out then. Thinking of this, Tiantian lifted her head and looked at Zhenzhen and said, Mom, do you remember Dr. Wang who saved me some time ago, and also helped us with the medical treatment, renting a house, and giving me money? Yes, I remember. The young man is very nice and polite to me. Isn't he a colleague at your hospital? Mu Zhenzhen had a very good impression of Wang Yu, and at that time, she thought that if her daughter could be with him, she would feel at ease. He is my boyfriend. I confessed to him the day before yesterday. Sweetie blushed again as she said, thinking of the image of herself being bullied by Wang Yu, but now feeling very happy. Really? Mu Zhen was a little incredulous. Her daughter was very timid, and if she didn't particularly like the other person, she definitely wouldn't take the initiative to confess. Some time ago, she would inexplicably call and tell her not to cook dinner, and when she got off work, she would come back with some packed meals. But after asking, Sweetie said it was bought from the hospital cafeteria and wasn't finished. Now that she thought about it, was it possible that the girl was already with someone at that time? How long have you known each other? Mu Zhenzhen asked. We've known each other for a few months. Sweetie counted on her small hands and felt that she had known Brother Yu for a long time. What does that Dr. Wang do at your hospital and how much does he earn a month? The common characteristic of mothers-in-law is that they are most concerned about the work and income of their future son-in-law and whether they can let their daughter live a good life after marrying him. Brother Yu is the most capable doctor in our hospital. I don't know exactly how much he earns, but when he was at Mary Hospital, President Han offered him 10 million yuan a year, plus a monthly commission. I remember it was nearly 7 million at the time. After thinking about it for a while, Tiantian recalled the way she had heard about Wang Yu's salary and couldn't help but smile. So, doesn't that mean he earns nearly 100 million yuan a year? Tiantian's answer shocked Mu Zhen. In his impression, Wang Yu, a young doctor, would not earn more than 30,000 yuan a month even if he was good at his job. This was already very satisfactory to her. After all, the older the doctor, the more popular he would become, and 30,000 yuan a month was already a lot, and her daughter would be able to live a good life after marrying him. But what she didn't expect was that the doctor who had kept her, Wang Yu, was actually so amazing that the money he earned in a year would be more than enough to last a lifetime. Tiantian, tell your mother from the beginning how you met and fell in love. Mu Zhenzhen felt that she had to consider this matter carefully. After all, her experiences when she was young made her naturally distrustful of such men of high status. Seeing her mother's serious expression, Tiantian became a little nervous, but she still gathered her thoughts and began to tell her mother the story of herself and Wang Yu. Chapter 145, Mother-Daughter Dialogue. You and I met more than 4 months ago. At the time, I was still working as a junior nurse in the pediatrics department at the Maria Hospital. One day, the head nurse suddenly approached me and said that she wanted me to be the full-time nurse for a new specialist. I was very scared at the time, because after all, the specialists in the hospital all had bad tempers. Several of my good friends had been scolded to tears by them. However, the salary for a full-time nurse was a bit higher, so I thought that if I could put up with it, I could earn a bit more money, so I agreed. The next day, I went to the gynecology clinic early, wondering if the specialist would be an old auntie, and not knowing her temper. If she was going through menopause, I would be in trouble. I waited all morning. And no one came, so I thought I wouldn't be coming in today, and I went back to my original department. Just before work started in the afternoon, the hospital's director Zhou informed me to go to work. When I got there, I met Brother Yu standing in the consultation room. Brother Yu is very young and has a good temper. We chatted for a while and then started working. That afternoon there were a lot of patients. Tiantian couldn't control her desire to express herself as she talked, and from the first time she and Wang Yu had worked together to seeing patients, she experienced what interesting patients there were every day, and how she thought about getting off work quickly every day. Although she was very tired every day, she was very happy. She talked about how amazing Wang Yu was, and how she could see fewer patients in a day, and as she spoke, the admiration in her big eyes leaked out. Mu Zhenzhen just listened quietly to her daughter's words, feeling very calm. She had plenty of time anyway, and knowing more details would help her judge Wang Yu. Mom, there's something I want to tell you, but you must keep it a secret. It's Yu's secret. After a while, Tiantian remembered Wang Yu asking her to do a paternity test. At that time, the little girl suspected that the friend Wang Yu mentioned was not himself. It wasn't until yesterday that Wen slightly revealed that Wang Yu had been divorced before. Tiantian was convinced that the person who wanted to do the paternity test was the child of Wang Yu and his ex-wife. Girl, you don't trust your mother. Mu Zhenzhen pretended to be a little angry, and she was a little uncomfortable being distrusted by her daughter. No, Mom, I guessed this, and it was only confirmed yesterday. Not many people know. Tiantian took her mother's hand and explained seriously. Go ahead, Mom will definitely keep a secret. Zhenzhen was also a little curious about what made her daughter so serious. Mom, brother Yu was previously married, but then divorced. When she said this, Zhenzhen's face changed a little. She still minded divorced men. Mom, just let me finish. Seeing her mother's changed face, Tiantian hurriedly explained. It wasn't actually brother Yu's fault that he got divorced, because the child his wife gave birth to wasn't his. Then Tiantian told about the paternity test that Wang Yu had entrusted her to do, and also about her shock when she saw the report at that time. Wang Yu would never have guessed that he had only asked Sweetie to help him get a paternity test for Chen Chusheng and Chen Yuding, and the little girl had taken it upon herself to do it. Although Sweetie guessed the right answer, this was not what Sweetie thought. He really couldn't be blamed for this. Zhenzhen was also a little incredulous when she heard this. As a man, it would be strange if he didn't divorce her in this situation, so she didn't mind Wang Yu's identity as a divorced man so much at the moment. Seeing her mother's change, Sweetie continued to tell the story, until she mentioned that the hospital had fired Wang Yu and issued a hospital-wide criticism. The little girl was furious. But she had shed many tears, and if Wang Yu had not taken her in, she would probably have resigned because of this. Why was he fired? Zhenzhen asked curiously. It's not because of that one Liang. Brother Yu's ex-wife is now his girlfriend, and he is taking revenge on Brother Yu. The incident of Wang Yu beating Wen Liang up in the dean's office spread quickly at Mary Hospital at that time, and Tiantian, who was a gossip lover, collected a lot of information. In addition, later, Dean Han defected and took away 1/3 of the doctors and nurses at Mary Hospital, and Tiantian heard even more gossip. Wen Liang's identity was also revealed, and even after Dean Han fired Wang Yu, he used Wen Liang's money to compensate him, which Sun Dishing also told. Wang Yu didn't know about any of this. After all, in the hospital, apart from Tiantian, the person he interacted with the most was Sumu. And Sumu knew more about Wang Yu's affairs than anyone else, and would never be stupid enough to tell Wang Yu about these things. The result was that most people in the hospital knew that Wang Yu had beaten up the chairman of Mary Hospital and was fired. He then founded Shuguang Hospital and, together with President Han, completely crippled Mary Hospital. After listening to Sweetie's explanation, Zhenzhen also sighed a little. At that time, she and her daughter were not driven away, but abandoned. Her then betraying husband forced her to divorce him for the mistress who gave him a son. Except for leaving behind a house, he took all the money with him. Thinking about the fact that she had raised Sweetie alone all these years, Zhenzhen felt a pang in her heart. After listening to Sweetie's story about Wang Yu's divorce, Zhenzhen now had a very good impression of him. Tiantian, are you still Dr. Wan's full-time nurse? Zhenzhen asked with emotion. Yes, Brother Yu pays me 50,000 yuan a month, which is more than the head nurse at our hospital. Tiantian was very happy to mention this, because she really loved jobs that paid well for little work, and it was even more rewarding to be able to spend every day with the person she loved. 50,000. Zhenzhen was shocked when she heard this. Was her daughter in love or being kept? Looking at her daughter's pretty little face, Zhenzhen felt that the girl must be hiding something from her. Yes, Mom, we'll get richer and richer in the future. Am I awesome or what? Tiantian didn't know what a young girl who had just entered society had to pay for an income of 50,000 yuan a month. Not to mention ability, after all, there are too many capable people, and how many can earn 50,000 yuan a month in their early 20s? Sweetie, have you and that Dr. Wang had a relationship? Zhenzhen's face was stern. She felt that her daughter had been cheated by that guy. Even if what Sweetie just said was true, it didn't mean that Wang Yu hadn't cheated Sweetie. Mom, no? Sweetie was very shy when she heard her mother's words, but when she thought about herself and Brother Yu, apart from being a little intimate, nothing like that had happened, and she suddenly wasn't so nervous. You're not lying to me? Zhenzhen was a little incredulous. Her daughter was so pretty and cute, and that guy was offering money and arranging jobs, but she had actually resisted for so long. Were there really such men in the world? Chapter 146, Chen Chusheng met up with Tiantian. When she was being interrogated at home, when Xin and Wen Wan also returned home, and Sun Qianyuan rushed over at this time as well. Recently, the several women have become close and have been spending a lot of time together, and their relationship is now getting along quite well. They eat and chat together casually, and when they saw Wang Yu and Wen Xin mentioning a few words about the arrival of the three Wen brothers, they didn't continue the conversation after seeing that her face looked very bad. When it comes to certain things, if someone doesn't want to talk about it, Wang Yu won't pry. She'll just be a good listener when she wants to know. In the afternoon, Wang Yu was called out by Chen Chusheng. He doesn't have any bad feelings towards this former father-in-law, nor does he have much of a good impression of him. After all, this guy really wasn't very nice to him a few years ago. When he arrived at Chen's company, Chen Chusheng's secretary was waiting for him at the door. Looking at the young girl in front of him, who was at most 25 years old, Wang Yu couldn't help but marvel at the great changes Chen had undergone. When they arrived at the chairman's office, Chen Chusheng was receiving a client. When he saw Wang Yu coming, he immediately greeted him. "Xiao Yu is here, come on in." He then ushered Wang Yu in and told the beautiful secretary, Xiao Li, to accompany General Shan to settle in and have dinner together in the evening. Neither Xiao Li nor the boss said anything about Chen Chusheng's arrangement. They just smiled at each other and left. It felt like they definitely knew each other, and it was hard to say if it was a relationship of knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses. "Uncle Chen, what did you want to see me about?" Wang Yu asked after sitting down. "Xiao Yu, Uncle Chen won't beat around the bush, I really need to ask you for a favor." "Uncle Chen, just tell me, I'll listen first, but I can't guarantee I can help you." "I can help." Chen Chusheng gave a smile and continued. "As you know, Uncle Chen, 10 children will be born next year. In the past, I just wanted to have an heir to carry on the family business, but now there are a bit too many of them, and Uncle Chen's family business is obviously not enough." After saying this, Chen Chusheng helplessly rubbed his head, as if he had been having a headache about this recently. In the past month, those 10 girls have been calling him all the time, asking him to go over to them, saying that they want to cultivate an emotional bond with their children in advance. Chen Chusheng's head was spinning. It's only been a few months, and the person hasn't even taken shape yet, so how can they cultivate feelings? Cultivating feelings with his own mother would be more like it. At first, Chen Chusheng was happy to do it, facing different pretty girls every day, and after taking Wang Yu's prescription, his body also recovered a little. He has completely bid farewell to the 2-minute level, and is now ready to maintain his mindset and be able to last up to 10 minutes. Chen is very proud of this. For a month, Chen has been juggling between several women, and his days have been full of happiness. But happy days are always short-lived. These women are no pushovers. After a few encounters with Chen, they are no longer satisfied with the 10 million yuan mentioned in the contract. While deliberately trying to please Chen, they are also trying every means to get benefits for themselves. Chen, the old fox, was still able to deal with these things, but he was a bit annoyed. And after a month of indulgence, Chen's erection had dropped back from 10 minutes to 3 minutes, which scared him a lot. In the past few days, he had started to abstain from sex, while conditioning his body and making plans for the future. All 10 women were now calculating their own interests. When the children were born and grew up, they would not know what kind of knowledge their mothers had instilled in them. Don't wait until they become adults, it will be a luxury to want to live a peaceful life in their old age. It can be said that recently, Chen really can't sleep at night. In the past, Chen only had one daughter, Chen Yuding, and no son. His biggest idea was to recruit a son-in-law. Who knew that Wang Yu was headstrong and refused to agree to it? Later, he started to plot against his granddaughter. After all, it is his own bloodline, and changing his surname to Chen is also a way to pass down the family business. So when Wang Yu and Chen Yuding got a divorce, Chen Chusheng didn't try to stop it at all, and was even quite happy about it. After all, everyone had to find evidence of who the father of the child was, but the mother of the child would know. Chen Chusheng's thinking at the time was that the 2 granddaughters were his anyway, and whether Wang Yu was their father or not didn't matter. But then, after Li Yuzhen and Lu Baochang's affair came to light, Chen Chusheng was completely dumbfounded, and never imagined that such a thing could happen to him. Seeing that he had no heir to his large family business, he thought of taking advantage of Wang Yu so that he would not be left without anyone to take care of him when he got old. What happened afterwards was even more unexpected to old Chen. Not only did Wang Yu refuse, but he also helped him get rid of his infertility. After some treatment, he now has 10 children. At the time, the immense joy made old Chen forget that having many children is not a good thing. At that time, it would have been better to have just 2 or 3, so that he would not have such a headache now. 10 children, all sons, all born in the same year. Chen couldn't imagine what a mess they would cause when they grew up. He thought about it for many days, and decided that he would just make his company bigger and earn more money, and then figure out how to divide it up. After learning about Wen Xian's relationship with Wang Yu, Chen Chusheng had been thinking about asking Wang Yu to help him get in touch with the Wen Group, so that his own company could also usher in greater development. But after he and I just started talking, and after I gave him a gift, the kid just disappeared. Later, I found out that he went back to get married, and after returning to Shidu City, he held another wedding with the Sun family's eldest princess. Old Chen was still thinking about whether he would hold one with Wen Xin in a few days, so these days, knowing that Wang Yu was in Shidu City, he didn't bother him. After waiting for more than 10 days and seeing that the guy still hadn't responded, Old Chen couldn't hold back anymore, so he asked Wang Yu over. Chen wanted Wang Yu to help introduce him to Wen Xin, so that they could discuss a business partnership. Wang Yu did not refuse Chen's request. It was just a matter of passing on the message. Whether or not to do business was up to Wen Xin to decide. As for whether they would reach a partnership afterwards was not something Wang Yu could control. After bidding farewell to Chen Shusheng, who was full of gratitude, Wang Yu fell into deep thought on the way back. His two wives were both wealthier than him, and Wen Xin's assets started at tens of billions. As for Sun Qian, although she is not as wealthy as Wen Xin, the two jewelry stores and the display cabinets in the shopping mall are worth at least several billion. Although he has earned the Sun family more than 100 million yuan with Chen Qian's help, this amount of money is really not enough to spend. He bought a villa some time ago, which cost him more than 30 million yuan, and now he only has tens of millions of yuan left. Chapter 147 Wang Yu's Plan. Thinking about the old man Chen, who is in his 50s and already worth billions, still thinking about asking people to do things for him and planning for his descendants. Is it too early for me to just lie back and relax when I'm only 30? And my descendants will only be more than old Chen, they will definitely not be less than him. Wang Yu silently calculated his wealth. It was definitely not enough to share. Wen Xin and Sun Qian's children could inherit their mother's wealth, but what about Wen and Tiantian? Their children would inherit their mother's credit cards in the future. And as their father, he could not just sit back and do nothing just because his wife was rich. But if his son is richer than he is, and he gives his son a few 100,000 yuan in New Year's Eve money, and then the little brat gives him a few million in return, then what will he do? Thinking about this, Wang Yu couldn't sit still anymore. He had to hurry up and push forward his own plan, and he had to make some investments this time, otherwise he would never be able to hold his head up in the family in the future. He could guarantee that he would not spend his wife's money, but could he also control his children from spending their mother's money? By that time, it won't matter if he's a kept man, because everyone will think he is. Wang Yu didn't go home, but went directly to his eldest brother-in-law Sun Dezhou. He had originally thought of waiting until after his child was born before starting a new plan, but now it seemed that he had to bring it forward. The Sun family headquarters had been built quite well, and it wasn't the first time Wang Yu had been here. After arriving at Sun Dezhou's office, Wang Yu quickly made his intentions known. Sun Dezhou frowned when he heard this. You have to know that a large part of the money the three brothers invested went into Shiguang Hospital. Although the hospital is doing a roaring trade and making a fortune, it is estimated that it will take another 2 or 3 years to recoup the costs. Brother-in-law, aren't you taking the new hospital project a bit too fast? Big brother, listen to me. It's not a new hospital, but a partnership with the Wen Group to revitalize the Maria Hospital, which they have lost money on. At present, we have Shiguang Hospital in the Eastern District, but we cannot give up on the old city. After all, even if the Eastern District continues to develop for another 10 years, its permanent population will still be less than that of the old city. As for why we chose Mary Hospital, I value the word fast. Although Mary Hospital does not look very good at the moment, it is only because it lacks some high-level experts, and the Wang Group does not have relevant management experience in hospitals, so it looks half-dead. But if we cooperate with our Shiguang Hospital, I believe these problems can be solved immediately. Moreover, the number of people we are currently recruiting at the hospital has already exceeded the limit. At that time, we only thought about doing it by force. President Han recruited too many people, and together with President Su, they recruited some more people. Now there are 15% to 20% more doctors and nurses at Shiguang. Therefore, by cooperating with the Wen Group now and revitalizing Mary Hospital, we can not only get rid of the burden, but also obtain a golden goose that can immediately make money. Wang Yu spoke with great enthusiasm, telling Sun Dezhou all his thoughts. After listening to Wang Yu's words, Sun Dezhou thought about it for a while and felt that this was feasible. He immediately called Suning. Wang Yu sat in his office chair, watching Sun Dezhou and Suning exchange views on the phone and discuss the feasibility. They talked for a long time, and halfway through, Wen Xin even called to ask him when he would be back for dinner, but Wang Yu refused, using business as an excuse. After hanging up the phone, Sun Dezhou looked at the busy Wang Yu and said seriously, "Brother-in-law, what you said makes a lot of sense, but there are 2 problems we are facing now. The first is that the one group has been tricked by us, so why would anyone cooperate with us? The second is, after cooperating with the one group, how much money do we have to pay? If we pay too much, we won't be able to afford it. If we pay too little, we won't have a large enough share, and we won't be the ones making the money. Sun Dezhao's words were meant to make Wang Yu back down. After all, he didn't think the first point alone could be resolved. Wen's group was such a large enterprise, and after suffering such a great loss in Shudu City, they were still thinking about cooperating? Hearing Sun Dezhao's questions, Wang Yu was filled with joy. The problems with Wen's group were not problems in his eyes. He could not come up with much money, but he could still come up with a little. If he brought Lao Chen on board, the hospital would be a success. Wang Yu was full of energy at the moment and said to Sun Dezhao, "Brother, don't worry about this. We have a good relationship with the chairman of the one group. As for the money, I will take care of my side, and Shen's family has also contacted me. It's not a big deal to get a share. As for the final division of shares, we can talk about it when things are settled." You know the chairman of the one group? Sun Dezhao was a little confused. If you know the chairman of the one group, why did Wen Liang come here and work for you? Well, I know that you have a lot of questions, but I can't tell you about these. You should ask Tiantian, she knows everything. I don't have anything else to do, so I'll go now, big brother. After saying this, Wang Yu slipped away. After all, if Sun Dezhao knew about his relationship with Wen Xin, it would be too dangerous for him to sit here. As he watched Wang Yu leave, Sun Dezhao took out his phone and called his sister. Yes, big brother? Tiantian, big brother wants to ask you something. Yes, ask. That Wang Yu came to see me just now, saying that he knows the chairman of Wen's group and wants to work together to revitalize Mary Hospital. What's wrong? Is there a problem? In Sun Xian's opinion, there is nothing wrong with this matter. It is very normal for Wang Yu and Wen Xin to seek cooperation with the Sun family, given their relationship with them. What I want to ask is what his relationship is with the chairman of Wen's group. This guy didn't tell me just now, saying that it would be clear after I called you to ask. Hearing her brother's words, Sun Xian couldn't help but pat her head. It seemed that she hadn't told her family about this matter, but it wasn't too late to talk about it now. After all, it wasn't anything to hide. That older brother, the chairman of the Wen family, is called Wen Xin, you know? Yes, I know. I met her a few years ago at a business reception. Wen Xin's relationship with Wang Yu is the same as my relationship with him, and she is also pregnant with Wang Yu's child. Hearing his sister's words, Sun Dezhao was stunned. Coupled with the fact that he knew about the conflict between Wang Yu and Wen Liang, Chen Yuding, and now adding the fact that Wen Xin was pregnant with Wang Yu's child. The amount of information was a bit overwhelming for a while, and Sun Dezhao felt that his brain was not enough to use. He thought about it for several minutes before he could sort it out. His admiration for Wang Yu at that moment was like the surging Yangtze River. What this guy had done was simply a thrill. In his opinion, Wen Liang had greened Wang Yu, and this guy had stolen the family and directly become the father of Wen Liang with a backhand. The operation was really awesome. Chapter 148, The Kidnapper. No wonder this guy is so confident. The chairman of the one group is pregnant with his child. How can he not be confident? Little sister, where are you right now? Can you come home for a while and tell me in detail? As the leader of the Sun family, Sun Dezhao, who is usually serious, was also attracted by this melon at this time. I'm here with Wen Xin. I don't have time to go back, so let's talk about it in a few days. After saying this, Sun Xian hung up the phone. After Wang Yu left Sun's headquarters, he received a call from Zhou Tingjian. The young man didn't know what had stimulated him, and he felt like he had been abandoned by the world, which made Wang Yu baffled. The two men made an appointment to meet at a place, and Wang Yu hurried over. When he arrived, he saw Zhou Tingjian drinking alone. Looking at the empty bottles on the table, he had drunk at least a dozen beers. What's wrong? After Wang Yu arrived, he patted Zhou Tingjian on the shoulder. Seeing Wang Yu come over, Zhou Tingjian looked at him with resentment in his eyes. In the afternoon, Sumu couldn't stand being harassed by Zhou Tingjian anymore, so she simply took leave to prepare to have a good talk with him. At first, Zhou Tingjian was still very happy, but as soon as Sumu finished saying no, the topic turned to Wang Yu. This time, Zhou Tingjian discovered the problem and realized that his sister Mumu had rejected him because she had someone she liked. And this person she likes is actually Wang Yu, who encouraged him to pursue Mumu. At that moment, Zhou Tingjian was so depressed that he wanted to find Wang Yu to settle the score, but then he thought that Wang Yu hadn't done anything wrong, and had even given him quite a few ideas. It was even less likely that he would blame Mumu. It was her right to like whoever she liked, and just because he liked her, she didn't have to like him back. After explaining things clearly to Zhou Tingjian, Sumu left. She felt that she had said everything she needed to say. If this guy still persisted, then it was better to not have a younger brother in the future. As for Zhou Tingjian, after listening to Sumu's words, he didn't want to pursue the matter anymore. The other person had already made it clear, and he didn't have the face to try to please her anymore. Although he had thought it through very clearly, he still felt very bad. So he immediately went out for a drink to relieve his boredom. As he drank, he wanted to call Wang Yu over to see how awesome he really was and make his sister Mumu fall for him. As he watched Wang Yu, who had sat down and started pouring his own wine, Zhou Tingjian became more and more displeased. He was not as tall or as handsome as he was, and apart from being a little paler than him, he could not see any advantages. "Brother Yu, I want to ask you, why does Sister Mu like you and not me?" Wang Yu, who was drinking a beer, choked directly upon hearing this and asked after coughing a few times. "Who told you that?" "Sister Mu told me personally that she rejected me this afternoon, and she also said that she likes you, telling me not to bother her in the future if I'm fine." What is Sumu trying to do, making her intentions clear? Is she not afraid that her father will find out and punish her? "Tingjian, I don't know about this either. I've already rejected her twice, and I also have a girlfriend, so I definitely can't be with her. Why don't you try harder, maybe next time she'll agree." As he said this, the image of the beautiful doctor once again appeared in Wang Yu's mind. He had to admit that being pursued by such a girl made him very happy. "Forget it, since we've come this far, there's no point in trying. I'll cancel my vacation tomorrow and go back to the army in a couple of days." After saying this, Zhou Tingjian drank another bottle of beer. Seeing this guy's negative attitude, Wang Yu didn't know what to say. You can't always lead someone towards the dog-licking direction, can you? "Come drink, brother Yu." "Okay, let's drink." The two men had not known each other for long, and there was not much to talk about, so Wang Yu was very depressed after a drink. At this time, the people Wen Zhong had hired had secretly determined Wang Yu's location and were ready to make the arrest. These people were not from Shudu City, but professionals hired by Wen Zhong through underground channels with a reward of 10 million. They did all kinds of work for no money, assassinations, kidnappings, and whatever evil deeds they could do, as long as you paid enough. Seeing that Wang Yu and the other person had almost finished drinking, the few men directly surrounded them. Zhou Tingjian, as someone from a special forces unit, had a keen sense of danger. Although he had drunk a lot today, it was still difficult to get drunk on beer. Therefore, at this moment, Zhou Tingjian's mind was still very clear. As for Wang Yu, forget it. With a capacity of 3 gene of Baijiu, he has never gotten drunk on beer. There were 5 people surrounding him, 2 of them were targeting Zhou Tingjian to prevent him from causing trouble, and 3 of them went over to abduct Wang Yu. In their opinion, 3 people were enough to deal with an ordinary doctor. After all, the 5 of them were all very skilled, and dealing with 2 men who had drunk too much was really too easy for them. They had thought they would have to follow and set up for a while, but they had not expected the target to be so cooperative. They had received the task in the morning, and in the afternoon they found the target coming out alone. They were happy just thinking about making that kind of money. When they saw the 5 people approaching, Wang Yu also discovered their intentions, but he was not intimidated by the situation. Just because he didn't fight much didn't mean he couldn't fight, and self-defense techniques for men were not just for defending against women. Unconsciously, he grabbed a bottle in his hand, but before he could do anything, Zhou Tingjian kicked one of the kidnappers out of the way with a flying kick. Then he launched an attack on the other kidnapper with a swift offensive, but he knocked him down in a few moves. Zhou Tingjian didn't hold back on these people, and he hit hard, because he could feel a murderous intent in all of them, and they obviously had all killed someone. In this place, a few strangers who have killed people come after him, and it is likely that they have been sent by other countries to target him. Now there is also a Wang Yu by his side. Although Wang Yu can bring him danger, it does not prove that this guy is good at martial arts. Seeing the situation was not good, the other 3 kidnappers immediately launched a coordinated attack against Zhou Tingjian. Mada thought that 10 million was easy to make, and indeed it is not easy to get money from capitalists. They took advantage of their numbers and immediately surrounded Zhou Tingjian. As for Wang Yu, no one bothered with him. Watching these people react so quickly and cooperate so well, Zhou Tingjian suddenly felt like he was facing a great enemy. Wang Yu was holding a beer bottle and was about to get started, and he was stretching to stay limber. He didn't expect the kidnappers to ignore him. His temper immediately flared up. Who did they think they were looking down on? While the kidnappers surrounded Zhou Tingjian, he charged right up. Wang Yu's actions immediately attracted the attention of the kidnappers, and Zhou Tingjian took advantage of the opportunity to make a move. The five of them engaged in a fierce fight. In less than 2 minutes, 3 kidnappers were knocked to the ground by Wang Yu and Zhou Tingjian. Looking at the crowd of onlookers around him, Zhou Tingjian picked up his phone and first gave a brief description of the situation to his sister, and then dialed the phone number of his unit. Chapter 149, My Mother Said. After the call was connected, Zhou Tingjian told the military leader what he had guessed. In response to this attack, the military immediately paid close attention to it. The military leader's face turned black when he heard that one of his soldiers had been assassinated while on leave. He thought about it more, and the first thing that came to mind was that Zhou Tingjian's identity had been leaked. Otherwise, how could these people locate him so accurately in such a big country? Then he thought about the missions Zhou Tingjian had carried out abroad over the past few years. He immediately ordered a team to be sent to take direct control of the kidnappers. At this time, when Zhong was still waiting in a hotel in Suzhou City, fantasizing about what he would do to Wang Yu after he was kidnapped, he never imagined that this incident would cause so much trouble for the Wen family in the capital. Zhou Tingjian's family background was not considered high, but the special forces he belonged to had an astonishing amount of power, and it was not something that ordinary people could access. Soon, Nan arrived at the scene in her police uniform, accompanied by a team of officers. A few policemen immediately handcuffed the 5 kidnappers. "Sister, you can't interrogate these people. Lock them up first," Zhou Tingjian said sternly. "What's wrong?" Nan asked curiously. "Sister, don't ask. We have discipline. The military will send someone over soon to take over," Zhou Tingjian said. Seeing that her brother didn't want to say more, Nan didn't ask again. After all, there were some things that she wasn't supposed to know. Soon, a few policemen took the 5 kidnappers away. These kidnappers didn't know what was waiting for them next. Nan stayed behind to keep her brother and Wang Yu company. After all, after something like this happened, she still had a lot of questions she wanted to ask them. The 2 of them had only half finished their drinks and barely touched their food. After the little exercise they had just had, they were a little hungry. They changed the location and Wang Yu ordered some barbecue and started eating. After listening to what her brother had just told her, Nan looked at Wang Yu with a different gaze. She didn't expect that this man in front of her was so good at fighting in addition to his medical skills. No wonder he was able to make his girlfriend like him so much. "Brother Yu, I think I will return to the army tomorrow, and I will have fewer opportunities to meet in the future. I hope you can treat Sister Mumu well," Zhou Tingjian said carefully. Wang Yu didn't know how to reply after hearing this. Didn't he just say it very clearly just now? He is a man with a wife, and you are asking me to treat your sister Mumu well. What exactly do you mean? Thinking about this, Wang Yu immediately wanted to argue back, but then he thought that this guy was leaving tomorrow, and he probably wouldn't see him again for a year, so he didn't bother to say much to him. He casually said a few words and said goodbye to the brother and sister. After waiting for a while for a designated driver by the roadside, Wang Yu went straight to his warm home. Because Tiantian had just called him, saying that she and Yan were there too, this made Wang Yu how could he bear it? In the past 2 days, he had been provoked by Tiantian and Sumo in turn, and this guy had long been full of anger, and he would definitely not let go of this opportunity today. After returning home, Wang Yu took a bath very honestly, and then waited for Wan to obediently go to bed, and then he could no longer hold back. He ran directly over, carried the most obedient Yan into the bedroom, and then came out again and carried Tiantian in as well. He put her on the bed and was about to go back out when he saw Wen Xin come in by herself. Wang Yu was overjoyed and immediately set to work. The next day, Wang Yu went to the hospital and felt that the world was so beautiful. When he arrived in his office, he saw the little nurse in the bowl. However, the little nurse at this time was a bit sullen, looking listless, as if she hadn't woken up. "What's wrong, Tian? Didn't you get any rest last night?" Wang Yu asked with concern. Sweetie looked at Wang Yu and nodded when she heard his voice. "My mom interrogated me all night, I'm so sleepy now." "What did she interrogate you about?" "Yesterday, Wen Xin and Wan went to my house and spent the morning chatting with my mom. In the afternoon, I told my mom about the 2 of us." "Wen Xin went to your house?" "Yes, my mom was so jealous, she kept praising Wen Xin for being so pretty." Hearing Sweetie's words, Wang Yu was very proud, thanks to his hard work. "You told your aunt about the relationship between you and me. What did she say?" My mom said to be on guard against you. Someone like you will definitely not treat me well, and you might just want to support me. When I get older, I will be kicked away, and I will be given the opportunity to ask you for more money, so as to prevent being abandoned with nothing in the future. My mom also said. After Mu Zhenzhen learned about Wang Yu and Wen Xian's relationship, she suddenly felt like she was facing a major enemy and began to earnestly persuade Tiantian, but the little girl just lowered her head and didn't say a word. Although she didn't say anything, Mu Zhenzhen knew exactly what her daughter was thinking. The girl was very calculating, and Mu Zhenzhen didn't know what to say at the moment. Moreover, the house they were living in, the money spent on it, and her daughter's job were all provided by Wang Yu. Could she just take her daughter and go live under a bridge? Having suffered and endured, Mu Zhenzhen understood even more than what Sweetie was thinking. Since the girl wouldn't listen to reason, she would let her protect herself. She immediately began to teach Sweetie how to fleece Wang Yu for money, and Sweetie listened with a head full of sweat. Sweetie listened in horror to the methods her mother described. If she really did what she said, she might get beaten to death by Wang Yu. Her little head shook like a rattle, expressing her disagreement and refusal to do so. Although Mu Zhenzhen spoke with relish, she didn't want her daughter to do anything like a mistress to get ahead. Seeing that Sweetie was shaking her head, she immediately got the idea of stealing Wang Yu's money. After all, in this day and age, as long as you have money, you can live anywhere. In the future, when she grows old, if her daughter has tens of millions, she and her daughter can live well. Throughout the night, Mu Zhenzhen became more and more enthusiastic and excited as she spoke, causing Sweetie to lack sleep and start dozing off as soon as she arrived today. As for what her mother said yesterday, she didn't remember a single word, and she didn't know where she had learned all this stuff. What Sweetie didn't know was that these tactics were all things that Mu Zhenzhen had learned from books or the internet after being abandoned by her father, and she was waiting until Sweetie grew up to teach her. After all, her own experiences had made her realize early on what men were like, and she was afraid that her daughter would suffer, so she wanted to study it herself first. After listening to Sweetie's words, Wang Yu was suddenly amazed at this Mu Zhenzhen whom he had met a few times. What kind of mother would teach her daughter these things? Sweetie, did your mother really say that you want me to get 20 million from me first? Wang Yu asked curiously. He felt that Mu Zhenzhen looked down on him a bit, satisfied with just 20 million. He had to know that his feelings for Sweetie were not a matter of money. Chapter 150, Take Sweetie Out to Spend Money. Thinking this way, Wang Yu felt that if he gave Sweetie 20 million first, he would basically have settled Mu Zhenzhen. Thinking about this, Wang Yu said to Sweetie, who was still dozing off. Let's go, brother, I'll take you out for a while. Where are we going? Ah, brother Yu, I want to sleep a bit. Let's go, I'll help you solve your problem. With that, Wang Yu went over and took Sweetie off work. Today, he was going to take Sweetie shopping, so that the young nurse would grow up seeing that money can buy happiness. After all, a girl should be brought up well, and it would be good to take her on a revengeful shopping spree. An hour later, Wang Yu took Sweetie to Sun Dexing shopping mall to go shopping. As for why they were here, it was because he didn't want to let other people have the chance to make money. Even if he had to spend money, he would spend it in places where he knew people. This lady, pack this bag for me. Wang Yu pointed at a bag priced at over 50,000 yuan in the LV store and said to the waitress following him. Sweetie felt a little confused as Wang Yu took her hand. She was inexplicably brought to the mall by Brother Yu, and then she just glanced at a bag, and Brother Yu directly bought it. You have to know that this bag is a month's salary for me. At that moment, Sweetie took Wang Yu's hand and said, Brother Yu, it's too expensive, don't buy it. Be obedient. I haven't bought you a gift for so long, and today I'll make it up to you. With hundreds of millions of dollars in his credit card, how would Wang Yu care about a 50,000 yuan bag? What's more, he came here with the intention of spending money. Sweetie was very moved when she heard Wang Yu's words, and she didn't say anything at the moment. Although she didn't know Wang Yu's exact income, she knew that 50,000 yuan really wasn't a lot for him. Just as the nurse was moved, a familiar figure appeared in the specialty store. Sweetie took a closer look and realized that it was none other than her half-brother, Tian Wenbin. Why was this guy here? Sweetie's face fell when she saw him. Although the two were siblings, their relationship was not good due to the reasons of their mothers. Tian Wenbin was a few months younger than her, and the two had actually been in the same school and even in the same class when they were in high school. When the first parents' meeting was held, her father came with Tian Wenbin's mother, and they happened to meet Mu Zhenzhen, who also came to the parents' meeting. The three of them immediately broke out in a fierce argument. Tiantian, who still didn't know what was going on, only realized in the midst of the tussle that the man she was arguing with was actually her own father. At the time, this was a big blow to the little girl. After returning home, Zhenzhen, knowing that she could not hide it anymore, told Tiantian everything that had happened. From then on, Tiantian hated Tian Wenbin whenever she saw him, and Tian Wenbin, at the instigation of his mother, actually began to bully Tiantian. Because of this incident, Zhenzhen had numerous arguments with her ex-husband's family over the next 3 years. However, she was outnumbered and did not get the better of the situation each time, and Tiantian was also beaten up several times by her father and younger brother in the process. It wasn't until she graduated from high school and went to university that she was able to escape this life. Today, when she saw Tian Wenbin again, she felt both disgusted and nervous. Tian Wenbin was buying a bag with a pretty girl and didn't notice Sweetie. "Wenbin, do you think I look good with this bag?" said a girl who looked to be 17 or 18, while checking herself in the mirror and carrying a beige new LV bag. Tian Wenbin secretly looked at the price of the bag and suddenly felt a little sad. Recently, he had learned from his friends to disguise himself as a rich second generation, and sure enough, he had girls falling all over him. He was originally having a lot of fun with this, but it was obvious that he hadn't learned the essence. Today, he was fooled by the little girl in front of him and brought her to the mall. At present, I can see that Tian Wenbin is about to run out of options. The bag that the woman he brought along chose cost 178,000 yuan, and he simply doesn't have that kind of money. Usually, he prepares 1,000 or 2 yuan worth of high-quality knockoffs for girls who fall for him, and with the help of the million-yuan luxury car he rents, he never arouses suspicion. Why did he get so hot-headed today and bring someone to the specialty store? Thinking about the bragging he did in front of the girl before, Tian Wenbin only feels his head spinning. If this happened normally, it would be a big deal, but this girl has spent more than 10,000 yuan on it herself, and it looks like she can get it, so if I give up, all that money will have been wasted. At this point, Tian Wenbin's mind was racing, and he really came up with a plausible excuse. Suddenly his eyes lit up and he said, "Tong Tong, this bag really looks good on you, but a few days ago I got into a bit of trouble. How about I buy you another one in a few days?" "What happened?" Tong Tong asked curiously. "I accidentally hit someone with my car and had to pay more than 200,000 yuan in compensation. It'll cost hundreds of thousands of yuan to repair the car too. I was afraid to tell my family, so I used all my pocket money. But my mom will wire me the money next month." When he said this, Tian Wenbin cooperatively took out his mobile phone, and there were really a few transfer records of hundreds of thousands of yuan on it. Seeing the transfer records on it, Tong Tong really believed it. What she didn't know was that Tian Wenbin had pooled the money with the other people pretending to be rich kids. A dozen people had pooled a few 100,000 yuan and transferred it to each other, which caused their bank card transaction amounts to rise. Combined with the real transfer records, this trick was quite convincing. After all, not everyone has millions of yuan in their card every month. "Then, Wenbin, you have to buy it for me next month." "Don't worry, Tong Tong, I like you so much, I will definitely buy it for you. Besides, there are only a few days left, I will bring you here again next week." Tian Wenbin, seeing that he had fooled Tong Tong, immediately kept making promises. "As for next month, this guy definitely won't buy it. By that time, he will have already eaten up this girl, and then blacklisted and deleted her, who will still know each other." "Well, thanks, Wenbin, I believe you." Tong Tong looked all smiles, but her eyes were still full of reluctance when she looked at the bag. Just as Tong Tong finished speaking, Wang Yu walked over. He had just seen Sweetie looking over here all the time, and thought she might like the bag too. But the young couple in front of him were buying it, and Wang Yu didn't want to steal someone else's love. Now it seemed that the two of them weren't planning to buy it, and as for what the man had said about coming back next month, Wang Yu didn't care at all. It was already quite restrained not to go up and directly pretend to be cool and forcefully buy it, who would still wait for you to buy it next month. "I didn't see my Sweetie looking over here 5, 6, 7, or 8 times. Waiter, wrap this bag up for me too," Wang Yu said, pointing to the bag that Tong Tong had just returned. 17,880, Sweetie should be able to raise her horizons a bit by carrying this bag. Chapter 151, Shopping Spree. Wang Yu's words immediately attracted the attention of Tong Tong and Tian Wenbin. The girl didn't really care after all, and she couldn't control what other people bought. Looking at Sweetie next to Wang Yu, she just felt very envious, but Tian Wenbin was really stunned at this time. He would at most feel that Sweetie's appearance was a coincidence, but the man next to Sweetie actually bought her a 178,000 bag, which he couldn't understand. Sweetie looked on, unconsciously slapping her brother Wang Yu in the face, and felt an indescribable happiness in her heart. Sweetie, let's go, we'll go buy some more clothes. After paying the bill, Wang Yu came over and took Sweetie's hand, ready to leave. Just as they reached the shop entrance, Sweetie seemed to come to her senses and took Wang Yu's hand, whispering, "Brother Yu, when we come back, let's return this bag, it's too expensive." Looking at Tiantian's nervous little expression, Wang Yu couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Didn't he used to feel the same way, thinking that these things cost tens of thousands of dollars and were simply unaffordable? When he had money, he would spend it. He had felt this way for a long time, and now spending $1 million or $2 really didn't make him feel anything. Wang Yu took Tiantian's soft little hand and kissed it gently, saying, "Tiantian, in the future, if you want something, I will buy it for you. Don't be afraid to spend money, these things really don't mean anything to me." Tian Wenbin and Tong Tong also walked out of the boutique at this time, and Wang Yu and Tian were sweetly chatting at the door. The boutique's waitresses also discussed the situation after seeing the two couples leave. "Oh dear, it's getting more and more difficult to understand. That handsome young man just now was wearing clothes that cost no more than 1,000 yuan, and yet he didn't bat an eye when buying things for his girlfriend. And that girl kept refusing, so I really don't understand. Well, look at that rich second generation wearing designer clothes and a watch worth millions, yet he won't buy his girlfriend a bag worth 100,000. Hey! It seems we need to keep our eyes peeled in the future, and not just go after those wearing designer clothes and watches. Who knows if they're not just knockoffs?" Hongjie is right, these days, the rich don't flaunt their wealth, so you can't really tell, while the poor like to dress up in flashy clothes, but when it comes to paying, they can't. The voices in the shop were not loud, but they were not quiet either, and the four people at the door all heard them. Tan looked at Tian Wenbin's eyes again and they seemed a little strange. When she thought about the past few days together, although this newly made second generation who she had just met had spent tens of thousands of dollars on her, it seemed that there had been no real high spending expenses. The biggest expense since they met seems to have been a 3,000 yuan dinner, and Tian Wenbin seems to have used a coupon, saying at the time that it was given to him by a friend of the owner. Now that she thinks about it, there is something not quite right about it. Could it be that this guy really is, as the waiter said, putting on an act, and is not really a rich second generation? And his Porsche, it seems, hasn't been seen for 2 days, as he said it was being repaired. And then there's this handsome guy next to him, buying his girlfriend a bag as if it were groceries. Could this be the real rich guy? Sometimes there is no harm in not having a comparison. Comparing Tian Wenbin's performance with Wang Yu's, there is really a big difference. Wang Yu and Tian didn't really care what the people inside were saying, and went to the top women's clothing store next door. Looking at the wide range of clothes inside, Wang Yu thought about the women in his family, as well as the two girls Wen Wan and Wen Jia. Plus Sweetie's mother, the relatives in Ye Wen's family, and her cousin Chunmei. It seems that he has never given any decent gifts. Since he has come to spend money today, he might as well get the big ones. Don't women like pretty clothes and bags? While Sweetie was happily picking out clothes, Wang Yu was thinking about what to buy. Wan and Sweetie are about the same size, so he can just buy what Sweetie is buying, and Yuan and Chunmei can buy the same size. As for the size of the clothes that Yuan wears, Wang Yu knows it perfectly well. He has touched them so many times that he is very familiar with them. When Xin and Xianxian will also buy some clothes. As for the others, just buy bags. Isn't it said that you will be satisfied with a bag? As long as you buy an expensive one, it will definitely be beautiful. Has Tian chosen? Yes, she has, brother Yu. Sweetie was holding a small t-shirt in her hand and said, "Wang Yu, as soon as I saw the price, wow, 2,888 yuan, it's really hard on Sweetie. You can't find clothes under 10,000 yuan in this store." "It's fine, brother Yu will buy it for you." Hand the small t-shirt to the waiter and then point at Sweetie and say, "According to this lady's figure, recommend a few sets of clothes, as long as they are expensive." This. "Sir, are you sure?" The waiter still had a professional fake smile on his face when he took the t-shirt, but he was a little surprised when he heard Wang Yu's words. "You have to know that any random piece of clothing in their store is tens of thousands of dollars, and if you want to buy the whole outfit, it will cost at least 100,000. According to Wang Yu's words, if you only buy the expensive ones, the whole outfit will cost straight up to 300,000. Sure, go ahead and choose." Wang Yu waved his hand with a calm air. "Little sister, your boyfriend really is too good to you. Come, let me help you choose some clothes." The waitress took the child by the hand, and the confused Tiantian went straight to the changing room. Every 5 minutes, Tiantian appeared in front of Wang Yu wearing a different style of clothes. The shy look made his heart itch, but Tiantian was beautiful in every style. After Tiantian had tried on different styles of clothes in the entire store, Wang Yu said to the waitress next to him while she was still changing clothes, "Buy 2 sets of the clothes this girl just tried on according to her figure." Then Wang Yu told the waiter about Wen Xin and Sun Xian's figures, and asked them to prepare a set each. "Sir, that's 4.72 million in total. Are you sure you want to buy it?" The waiter's hands trembled a little. She had really never encountered such a buyer in the 2 years she had worked in this store. "Swipe the card." Wang Yu was too lazy to say anything more, and simply handed over the card. Then he left his villa address and asked them to help deliver it later. The manager who rushed over said that there was no problem with the home delivery service, and that she would deliver the clothes herself after they were ready. After changing clothes, Tiantian, who had come out, was a little afraid to speak when she took Wang Yu's hand. She felt that Wang Yu had changed a lot today. "Brother Yu, there are too many clothes for me to wear, so..." Tiantian's words were interrupted by Wang Yu before she could finish speaking. "Obey, and later Brother Yu will buy you a house." Upon hearing this, Tiantian was completely confused. What did Brother Yu want? Did he really want to take care of me? Did my mother really have the right idea? Chapter 152, Everyone has their own agenda. Brother Yu bought me so many things today, and then he's going to buy me a house later. Does he really want to support me? But I want to live with my mother. What if Brother Yu doesn't agree? And will the house Brother Yu buys not have my name on it, and I'll just be living there? Thinking about what her mother said last night, her sweet little head started spinning. Su Muzhen basically introduced to Tiantian the price of each community of houses in the old city and the eastern city. The price of a house in the eastern city is basically about 20,000 yuan per square meter, and the price of a house in the old city is basically between 12,000 and 15,000 yuan. This way, a 100 square meter house costs between 1.2 million and 2 million yuan, which is not even half of the clothes that Brother Yu just bought. Tiantian just went over what her mother had said in her head, but she was not a materialistic girl. Even if Wang Yu really wanted to support her, she didn't want to just accept Wang Yu's gifts. Looking at Tiantian, who was once again in a daze, Wang Yu realized that he had taken a big step and had obviously scared the little nurse. Thinking about this, Wang Yu felt that he should explain things to Tiantian properly later, otherwise the little nurse's mind would wonder what else she would think of. Several waitresses who were packing clothes looked at Wang Yu with burning eyes. Such a handsome man, and so generous, he was simply the perfect Prince Charming in their hearts. Unfortunately, he already had a princess by his side, and they had no chance at all. "Tiantian, don't think too much. We've already confirmed our relationship now, so buying you a present really isn't a big deal. But Brother Yu, you've spent too much money. In just a little while, you've already spent almost 5 million. Okay, let's go eat something first. Later, we'll call your aunt and go look at a house together. Besides, I think if I spend more money on you, your aunt will feel more at ease about our relationship." After saying this, Wang Yu took Sweetie's hand and went to the restaurant on the 4th floor. There was a Chinese restaurant of a decent standard there, with a per capita consumption of about 2,000 yuan. It wasn't expensive, but it wasn't cheap either, targeting couples with a little petty bourgeoisie. When they arrived at the restaurant, they looked around and saw that the lightly extravagant decoration style was really quite good. Ordinary people definitely can't afford to eat here. The people who come here are more or less well off, and the service attitude is also particularly good. Wang Yu and Tiantian just came in and felt the attentive service. When they came to their seats, the waiter took out a menu. Wang Yu casually flipped through a few pages and was a bit puzzled by the very literary names on it. What's the point of ordering so many fancy dishes? If there weren't pictures, he wouldn't have any idea what the dishes were, and he didn't want to let Sweetie order, because if the little nurse ordered something like cucumber, he wouldn't want to eat. On the first page, you recommend the specialty dishes, so let's have a bit of everything. With that, Wang Yu dismissed the waiter and left. The dishes recommended by the restaurant looked okay, but the prices were slightly more expensive. A few dishes cost about 7,000 yuan, but of course that was nothing to Wang Yu. Soon a few dishes were served. The two of them ate and chatted, and Tiantian's nervous heart relaxed a lot. Wang Yu instilled a lot of novel ideas in her, such as how much he was currently earning, and that the money spent was a percentage of his salary, which was his 1 or 2 days' worth. Tiantian slowly accepted Wang Yu's words. After all, there was no way not to accept them, and the money had already been spent. Just as the two of them were enjoying a sweet moment, with you feeding me a bite and me helping you pick up a dish, Tian Wenbin pulled Tong Tong and walked into the restaurant. When Sweetie saw her half-brother, she was taken aback. How could he be so persistent? She couldn't even have a meal without running into him. After what had just happened, Tian Wenbin felt that Tong Tong had begun to doubt him, so he was prepared to go to a high-end restaurant at lunchtime to regain some lost points. As soon as he entered the door, he saw his sister again, and Tong Tong's eyes lit up when she saw Wang Yu. After all, this man was really generous with his money, and when she looked around at Tian Wenbin by her side, she suddenly felt the huge difference. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Seeing Sweetie, who was happily chatting, suddenly shut up and her face darkened, Wang Yu asked with concern. "Brother Yu, that person is my younger brother." Sweetie no longer hid it from Wang Yu this time and pointed at Tian Wenbin. Wang Yu looked back and saw that it was the young couple he had met earlier when buying the bag. The two were not siblings, so why didn't they say hello when they met? Just as Wang Yu was in a daze, Tian continued. "My father abandoned my mother and I because of his wife. Later, when we were in the same school, he always bullied me. My mother and I were both beaten up by their family several times, and he spread rumors everywhere that I was the daughter of a mistress. Obviously, his mother was the mistress, but many people at school still believed him." Sweetie talked and talked, shaking off years of grievances, and then told Wang Yu about the grievances and grudges between the two families over the years. The little nurse was aggrieved in her heart, and the more she talked, the more she couldn't control her emotions, and her eyes were red. Wang Yu was dumbfounded as he listened, completely unable to believe that the little nurse, who was usually lively and cheerful, had so much going on inside. He quickly tried to comfort her. When he looked at Tian Wenbin again, his eyes were different. He had actually hit Sweetie, which was unforgivable. Thinking about this, Wang Yu picked up the half-drunk soup on the table and walked expressionlessly towards Tian Wenbin. When he got to him, he put his hand on the guy's head and then kicked Tian Wenbin away. Tong Tong had a good impression of Wang Yu, but it wasn't hard to see her boyfriend being bullied for no reason. "What are you doing? Why are you hitting people? This little girl has nothing to do with you, just stay out of it." Wang Yu was unmoved and did not want to let Tian Wenbin off so easily. Tian Wenbin, who had been kicked, of course understood why Wang Yu had beaten him up, and immediately stood up and pointed at Tian and cursed. "Good, you bitch, you actually dared to let someone come over and beat me up. Just wait until I get you and your mother killed." Seeing that this guy was still so arrogant, Wang Yu went up and gave him 2 big slaps, knocking Tian Wenbin's head dizzy. "How dare you talk to your sister like that? Come here and kneel down and apologize to your sister." The people who had originally wanted to come over and stop the fight also didn't feel comfortable going forward after hearing Wang Yu's words. It seemed that this was a family matter, but wasn't it a bit arrogant for the brother-in-law to beat up his brother? Moreover, at this moment, Tian Wenbin didn't seem as irritable as before, and was much more honest. He didn't have the unruly appearance he had when he was just beaten up, and it looked like he had been beaten into submission by Wang Yu. Chapter 153, Scumbag and Gold Digger. Tian Wenbin was dragged by Wang Yu in front of Tian, kicked in the leg, and kneeled in front of Tian with a hard push. This guy just reacted now, realizing that his sister had really found a big backer, and unlike before, she was no longer being scolded at will. Tong Tong ran over and grabbed Wang Yu's arm, trying to save Tian Wenbin. It seemed that the little girl still had a good impression of him. In fact, what Wang Yu didn't know was that the information revealed by Tian earlier had made her aware of the relationship between the two men. Tong Tong's suspicions had long since vanished, and now she was quite sure that Tian Wenbin was a genuine rich second generation. Although he had just been beaten up and seemed to have lost face, the guy really was rich. If she rushed up to him and behaved well, maybe in a while it wouldn't be as simple as him buying her a bag. He was very brave and went over to pull Wang Yu up. He thought to himself that it would be best if this handsome guy slapped him again, so that his actions would seem more genuine. Tong Tong, who was calculating, didn't know that all these things she was thinking were wrong. Tian Wenbin was also thinking about how to get closer to Tian's relationship. In the past 2 years since entering society, he has truly realized the role of money. Although his family is quite well off, with an income of 40,000 to 50,000 yuan a month, it is still far inferior to those real playboys. If he can obtain Sweetie's forgiveness, he will definitely be able to make a lot of money from this person in front of him by virtue of his position as her brother-in-law. Thinking about this, Tian Wenbin felt that it was still right to be beaten today, and maybe his cheap sister really would forgive him. He immediately knelt down, and even when Wang Yu let go of his hand, he did not stand up. From the moment Wang Yu left until he started beating his younger brother, Tiantian was in a daze. She didn't know that her man, who had treated her so well, just listened to all the grievances she had suffered in the past and immediately started to take revenge for her on the spot. It wasn't until now that her younger brother, who had always bullied her in the past, knelt in front of her that Tiantian came back to her senses. Sister, I'm wrong, please forgive me. Tian Wenbin is worthy of being a master of disguise. His expression at this meeting was full of remorse, and he was dragging Tiantian's clothes in a remorseful expression. Looking at his younger brother in front of him, Tiantian's face did not show any expression. The so-called family affection had long since disappeared many years ago. At that moment, Tiantian took Wang Yu's hand and said, "Brother Yu, let's go, I don't want to see him." After saying that, he turned to Tong Tong next to him and said, "Little girl, don't let him fool you. Tian Wenbin is not some rich second generation, and I have long since had nothing to do with him. My mother divorced my father 20 years ago. He is the child of my father's mistress. You have to think carefully." After saying this, the two paid the bill and left. Wang Yu didn't ask any more questions about what had just happened, and Tiantian didn't say anything more either. In the restaurant, after hearing Tiantian's persuasion, Tong Tong looked at Tian Wenbin with a different look in her eyes. Is what she said true? Tong Tong, let me explain. That bitch just lied to you. Ma did just ordered and spent more than 3,000 yuan on this guy. Not only will he be beaten up, but Sweetie's words have made the target in front of him doubt it. Tian Wenbin just feels like his luck is really bad today. Is she your sister? Tian Wenbin didn't lie this time. In his opinion, confirming the relationship with Sweetie might even increase the credibility of being a second-generation rich kid. Well, yes. Your father and your sister's mother have been divorced for a long time. Don't lie to me, I will go and ask around. Tong Tong asked another question with an expressionless face. Yes. Hearing Tong Tong say this, Tian Wenbin had to answer honestly. In that case, your mother really is a mistress. I mean, how dare your brother-in-law treat his own brother-in-law like this? The conversation between the two made the people in the restaurant point and laugh, and Tian Wenbin was thick-skinned and didn't care. But Tong Tong was just a little girl, and she would be angry at what people would say. Look at the clothes that young man is wearing, they don't seem to be authentic. Yes, I remember those shoes he's wearing. They're sold online for 300 yuan a pair, and they look very similar to the real thing. The watch he's wearing is a knockoff of a brand I own. I could tell right away that it's a fake, because I bought mine at an authentic store for several 100,000 yuan. The waiter there told me a lot about how to tell the difference between a fake and the real thing. Most people who come to this restaurant to eat have some money, and they are really good at identifying designer brands. It didn't take long before they analyzed the fake goods that Tian Wenbin had carefully purchased. Another young man took out his phone and did some calculations. The final result was that if these were all genuine goods, they would cost about 700,000 yuan, but Tian Wenbin's high-quality counterfeits would cost no more than 2,000 yuan at most. Listening to what the people around her were saying, Tong Tong's anger reached its peak. She had almost been deceived by this liar. She slapped him in the face and angrily shouted, "Liar!" Tian Wenbin, who had been exposed, looked as if he had just been caught in the middle of a bowel movement. He stood up and slapped Tong Tong twice, leaving her stunned. Having been unmasked, Tian Wenbin turned on her immediately. The woman in front of him had actually dared to hit him. Tong Tong rubbed her swollen face in disbelief and pointed at Tian Wenbin, shouting, "You liar, how dare you hit me? What's wrong with hitting you? Do you think I'm not good enough for you because you see that I'm not a rich kid? Don't forget that I've spent more than 10,000 yuan on you these days. What makes you think you can look down on me and hit me? Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. You think you're pretty and you're looking for rich kids to make money off of. You're a bitch too, a gold digger. Ah! I'll kill you." After being sprayed by Tian Wenbin, Tong Tong was directly blown up. Although she was thinking of finding a rich second generation, she really wasn't a gold digger. In her mind, she was just being picky about her boyfriend. She immediately lunged at Tian Wenbin and gave him a claw. Tian Wenbin, who was resisting, did not notice and got 5 bloody finger marks on his face. Looking at the manicure that Tong Tong had just done, Mata still paid for it himself. At the time, he thought it looked pretty good, and he held Tong Tong's little hand and felt it for a long time, not expecting the attack to be so strong. At that moment, the two of them began to tear at each other. Tong Tong looked weak and frail, but she was not at a disadvantage at all. Before long, Tian Wenbin had a face full of claw marks from the scratching, and the people around them were pointing and discussing while watching. No one actually thought of going up to stop it, and it wasn't until the security guards at the mall arrived upon hearing the news that they stopped the farce. Chapter 154. Wang Yu was a rich man. Wang Yu took Tiantian directly to a newly opened property in Dongqing district. On the way there, he tricked Tiantian into calling her mother to come over too. After looking at the property, the two of them were sitting on the sofa resting. Which one did Tiantian like? Brother Yu, maybe we shouldn't buy it. I don't want you to spend money on me anymore. It makes me feel like you're supporting me. What kind of talk is that? What do you mean by support? Are you doubting my feelings for you, or are you doubting your own feelings? No, you go, it's just that I feel really strange about this. It was fine before, but now that you're spending money, I feel like our relationship isn't pure anymore. Sweetie's words made Wang Yu feel a little guilty. After all, he had 3 women, so his feelings for Sweetie could never be pure. As for spending money on Sweetie to buy bags and clothes, it was even more to appease his future mother-in-law, who might cause trouble. Now he is dragging Sweetie along to buy a house, also for his own future. In the light of his future mother-in-law's doubts about his character and behavior, Wang Yu simply decided to go along with the flow. If you think it's a mistress, then I'll just spend money on her. As long as you're happy to let your daughter follow me and not cause any trouble, that's fine. As for whether he truly treats Sweetie well, as long as the little nurse understands that in her heart, that's enough. Sweetie, don't think like that. As your boyfriend, can't I buy you gifts? But these things are so expensive. If they are expensive, they are not gifts. Do rich people have to spend hundreds of dollars on gifts? Be good, when your mother comes over, choose a house you like and write her name on it, so your mother will feel at ease that you are with me. Wang Yu's words left Sweetie at a loss for words. After all, the things Wang Yu bought were really not much for his income. On the way here, Wang Yu told her that the consultation fees for 5 patients a day were 2 million each, and he and the hospital split it 40 to 60. Wang Yu gets 6 million, and the hospital gets 4 million, and every year Wang Yu gets a 5% bonus. These are the things that Sun Dishing told him later. Although Wang Yu didn't invest any money, he is a golden brand for Shiguan Hospital. Many rich people come here because of his reputation, and the 10 well-known experts that Dean Han recruited don't earn much less than Wang Yu, but they don't have as much free time as Wang Yu, and they don't get a bonus. In this way, Wang Yu earns 6 million yuan every day except for his days off, which comes to more than 100 million yuan a month. When Sweetie heard this, she was shocked. She knew very well the patients Wang Yu had scheduled appointments with, and they went as far as July of next year. In this way, Wang Yu's annual income is nearly 2 billion yuan. Sweetie couldn't understand why those people would spend 2 million yuan to see Brother Yu. In fact, she underestimated the base of wealthy people in the country. You have to know that the people Wang Yu targets already have their own small circles, and information spreads quickly. After Wang Yu's fame was confirmed, the owners of some industries or top employees knew that there was a very powerful doctor at Shiguan Hospital in Shidu City. For those wealthy people who want children or want to directly have twins, 2 million is well worth it. Moreover, Wang Yu also targets men and has developed a good set of conditioning methods that have a significant effect on body conditioning. For those women who have undergone Wang Yu's massage, the minor problems that have accumulated over the years are completely cured, and the effect is even more obvious when combined with the maintenance medicine given by the system. Making money is really too easy for Wang Yu nowadays. Many people regard Wang Yu as a modern-day miracle doctor. However, Wang Yu is not able to diagnose and treat everyone. For some men with complete azoospermia, he is also powerless. Faced with these people, Wang Yu makes it very clear that no means no. As for women who have completely lost their fertility, although Wang Yu cannot help them conceive, he can still restore their bodies to good health. So even though not every man can have a child here, it is not Wang Yu's problem. After all, if your body is like that, it is useless no matter who comes. Although Wang Yu is not 100% able to cure infertility, as long as you still have the possibility of having children, you can have a child by coming to him, and more people came at that time. Many of them are healthy, but their requests are generally for twins, triplets, or a request for a son or daughter. This makes the base number even larger, and the hospital's business will be even better. After the two had chatted for a while, Tiantian's phone rang. At this time, Zhenzhen had just arrived at the sales department and received Tiantian's call. She was still unsettled. She felt a little embarrassed when she thought about the things she had said to her daughter yesterday. Moreover, she had taught herself all this online, and she had no idea if it would actually work. She never imagined that her daughter would actually do as she was told, and that the other party would actually start spending money on Sweetie. Zhenzhen, who had completely lost trust in men, believed only in the money in her pocket at this time, so after hanging up the phone, she quickly came over. She had already made up her mind, and she was going to let her daughter add her name to the house even if it meant losing face. "Mom, over here." Sweetie didn't answer the phone because she had already seen Zhenzhen, and she immediately stood up and waved. After seeing her daughter, Zhenzhen put away her phone, and her eyes naturally fell on Wang Yu, who had already stood up. "Hello, Auntie Mu." Seeing Zhenzhen walk over, Wang Yu quickly greeted her politely. Then he took out a watch and directly gave it to Zhenzhen. This watch was originally intended for Wen Xian's daughter-in-law, but then it turned out that her daughter-in-law was actually Chen Yuding, so he definitely wouldn't give it away. The one for Wen Liang, he had already given to his father, and as for his mother, she didn't like to wear these things. As for watches, jade and jadeite, his mother was instead very interested in gold. So this watch has been sitting in Wang Yu's car until now, and it was only today that Wang Yu remembered it and happened to give it to Zhenzhen. "Tiantian, help me pull, Mom will wear this watch." Saying this, Wang Yu handed the watch to Tiantian, who had already taken hold of Zhenzhen's arm. The little nurse took the watch and, without even looking at it, was about to put it on Zhenzhen's wrist. She didn't know anything about brand-name watches, and Wang Yu hadn't bought one for Tiantian either, but this lady's watch in front of her looked very expensive. Tiantian was still very happy that Wang Yu had given such an expensive gift to her mother. Zhenzhen, who had not yet spoken, was directly shocked by Wang Yu's generosity. Tiantian didn't know the value of this watch, but she knew very well. After all, she was in her 40s and had seen it all. Chapter 155, The Old Scumbag and the Old Green Tea. She had originally wanted to give Wang Yu a hard time and show off her status as the mother-in-law, but now Zhenzhen didn't know what to say. Taking advantage of others is a shortcoming, and mothers-in-law are no exception. She could only pat Sweetie's hand and say to Wang Yu, "Xiao Yu, I know everything about you and Sweetie. As a mother, I definitely don't approve of my daughter following you like this." She sighed slightly, as if remembering some sad past, and looked at her daughter seriously and said, "But as a woman, my experience tells me that men can change, so don't blame your aunt for being greedy." This was said to Wang Yu, but also to her daughter, to make her understand that money is much more important than love. Wang Yu, as someone who has been there, nodded in agreement with Zhenzhen's words. However, Sweetie felt a little embarrassed. She felt like her mother was discussing how much money she should get with Wang Yu. She immediately lowered her head and blushed, not knowing what to say. Thinking about how much hardship and difficulty Zhenzhen had gone through when she was young, when her husband betrayed her and she had to raise Sweetie alone. It was understandable that she had lost trust in men. Wang Yu immediately assured Zhenzhen, "Auntie, don't worry, I really like Sweetie. Although you won't believe me when I say this, I will definitely let you see for yourself." Then he pointed to the sand table in the sales center and said, "Sweetie, just pick whatever you like, and I'll buy it for you outright, so that you can rest assured." "Who do you think you are? It's not Zhenzhen, is it?" As soon as Wang Yu finished speaking, a slightly mocking voice came over. A woman with a hot body and heavy makeup walked over carrying a middle-aged man on her arm. "Isn't Sister Zhenzhen the one who despises women who marry rich men? How come her own daughter has found a rich man?" "Lu Zizi, shut up." Zhenzhen looked at the man and woman approaching with eyes that were about to burst into flames. Tiantian took her mother's hand and tugged her back, afraid that she would rush over and start a fight. Wang Yu, meanwhile, frowned at the man and woman in front of him, feeling that they were up to no good. "Aren't you going to introduce yourself, young man?" Lu Jiayi's eyes lit up when she looked at Wang Yu. He was such a good-looking young man that her heart fluttered. "Wang Yu, Tiantian's boyfriend, how do you two do? I am Tiantian's stepmother, and this is Tiantian's father." After Lu Jiayi finished speaking, the man next to her slightly raised his head, waiting for Wang Yu to go up and pay his respects, with the bearing of an old father-in-law. "Oh, so that's the old scumbag who abandoned his wife and daughter and the old green tea who seduced someone else's husband." With that, Wang Yu turned around, went up and took Sweetie's hand, then said to Zhenzhen, "Auntie, don't talk to people like this, it's not good to get angry, let's go buy a house." Then the three left without looking back, leaving the scumbag and bitch who had been sprayed with anger by Wang Yu's words. "Is this all you have? There are no better houses. Wang Yu looked at the brochure and wasn't very satisfied. The quality of this property was very poor, with all the buildings being over 20 stories tall, and the largest house being less than 200 square meters. He was buying a house today to pay the bride price, and he simply couldn't look at these. Sir, we also have a completed community with low-rise houses and townhouses, but the price is much higher. Let's go take a look. After Wang Yu finished speaking, he looked at Tiantian and Zhenzhen, but it didn't look like he was asking for instructions, but rather informing the two of them. Zhenzhen was still catching her breath, and when she looked at her dazed daughter, she suddenly felt a little discouraged. She had taught for half a day for nothing last night. Well done, Xiaoyu, whatever house you buy today, I will take it for sweetie. As she said this, she glanced at LV Tiantian, who had just walked over. Please, sir, we have a vehicle ready for you. After consulting her superior, the saleswoman immediately received approval and then came over to respectfully invite Wang Yu and his party to view the property. Auntie, should we invite the couple? Invite them for what? Invite them to come and see how good it is for you and Tiantian to live together? Zhenzhen's eyes lit up at this, and she said to her ex-husband. Tiantian, your daughter is buying a new home, do you want to come and have a look? Tiantian was about to refuse, but Lu Tiantian immediately pinched his arm, and immediately smiled at Zhenzhen and said. Tiantian is buying a wedding house, how can we as parents not come and have a look? At that moment, the several people got into a business car prepared by the sales department. Xiaoyu, where is your home and what do you do for a living? As soon as she got in the car, Lu Kaikai sat down next to Wang Yu, making Zhenzhen grind her teeth in anger. Tiantian looked at the three women behind him and immediately chose to switch places with the sales lady and sat in the passenger seat. Wang Yu thought about the couple who had squeezed in and decided to take them alone. He would definitely show off his wealth later, making Tiantian and her mother look like fools. I'm from the countryside and currently work as an outpatient doctor in a small hospital. Wang Yu's hometown was originally a rural area, so it was correct to say that he was from the countryside. And it wasn't a lie to say that he worked in a hospital. However, LV Tiantian obviously didn't believe him and obviously didn't want to let Wang Yu off the hook. She then asked. Xiaoyu, where are we going to look at the house? Lu Tiantian just knew that they were going to look at a house, and that it was in the sales department of a car market, and that there was a sales lady with them, but she didn't know where it was, and she was full of curiosity. Don't worry, Auntie, you'll know when we get there. Wang Yu gave a small smile and looked as if he were saying, guess. 10 minutes later, the minivan pulled up to the entrance of an upscale residential community. Sir, are we going to look at a house or a townhouse? Isn't there anything better? Wang Yu looked at the surroundings and felt that it was not bad, but since he wanted to show off his wealth, he of course had to buy the best. There is, sir. There are currently 2 single-family villas in the community that are not for sale. Let's go see the villas. But a few minutes later, the minivan stopped in front of a garden villa. A middle-aged man in his 30s, dressed in a butler's uniform, was clearly a professional, and he greeted Wang Yu and the others with a smile. Behind him was a young lady with glasses, dressed in designer clothes, and with a hot body. Sir, these two are the company's sales manager and top consultant assigned to you. The sales lady saw the envy on the faces of the two men. This female in uniform is the company's top salesperson. This time, she is going out with the manager, presumably to prepare to take down this villa number 1. Wang Yu didn't care about the change in personal service, and nodded slightly before getting out of the car. Nana, introduce Mr. Wang first. The butler man said to the uniformed woman next to him. Okay, Manager Zhou. Chapter 156, Technology Changes Life. After Nana finished speaking, she walked in a professional manner to Wang Yu, but there were no unusual movements or expressions. After all, Nana was a professional, and the man in front of her was followed by a pure and cute little girl. The relationship between the two was not ordinary at a glance. This simple little girl is also so beautiful, it is not difficult to guess that she is the man's heart treasure. At that moment, she knew that the method of sacrificing herself for a room, which had the highest success rate, would not work. This time, she was prepared to use her real skills to severely slap those who gossiped about her behind her back. Mr. and Mrs. Wang, please follow me. Nana bowed elegantly and made a gesture. Sweetie was embarrassed by the words Mrs. Wang, holding Wang Yu's hand shyly and not daring to speak. The two old women, Muzhen and Ilzhan, had been in a daze since they saw this villa and still hadn't reacted yet. As for Tiantian, he had just said he was going to buy cigarettes, but he hadn't come back yet. He was probably afraid that his new love and his old love would fight again. In the past, Zhenzhen was alone, and he still had an advantage. This time, she was accompanied by Wang Yu. If there was a fight, she would definitely be no match for him. It would be better to let the women fight, and then she could just go over and pick up the pieces. Wang Yu put his arm around the soft, delicate waist of Tiantian and followed Nana into the garden villa. Manager Zhou respectfully followed behind, looking at the couple walking past in front of him. They were rare and handsome, and the woman was even the best of the best. None of the women in his sales department could compare, and although he didn't know if this Mr. Wang would buy this villa from the girl he brought, he definitely had the strength. If he didn't buy it, it wasn't that they didn't have the money, but that they didn't like the house. Thinking of this, Manager Zhou immediately followed behind. Zhenzhen and LV Xiaoxiao glanced at each other, and without bothering to argue, they immediately chased after them. Sweetie, what do you think of the one you like? Although this villa is a bit small, it is enough for you and your mother to live in. If you are not satisfied, I will give you the villa I have in Tiantian. Wang Yu said it casually, but he really thought so in his heart. His own villa is almost growing hair, and when he bought it, he was thinking about being able to enjoy the happiness of having 2 wives. Now it really was just his own overthinking. Brother Yu, I don't want your house. You, don't spend any money on me, okay? Sweetie raised her little face and looked at Wang Yu seriously. While this couple was showing off their affection, Nana in front of them was not at all calm. As a gold medal salesperson in the real estate industry, how could she not know the name of Tiantian? The lowest villa there costs more than 20 million yuan, and the better ones even reach 40 million yuan. At present, it can be said to be the most top-notch and luxurious community in Sioux City. Those who can live there are all worth over 100 million. Think about those people who can spend tens of millions of dollars on a villa. Would they come with a simple decoration? They would definitely come with as much luxury as possible, not to mention the furniture and other things. International brands would have to take a back seat. Without a custom-made set, it would be a shame to the homeowner's taste. Thinking about this, Nana perked up, immediately entering the mood, and becoming more and more respectful towards Wang Yu. Mr. and Mrs. Wang, this villa is the highest-end villa in the entire community. Let me give you a brief introduction. This villa is located in the center of the community and comes with 3 private parking spaces. There is a garden of no less than 60 square meters in front and behind the villa. As Nana gave her introduction, the two of them also got a brief idea of the villa. The villa has already been decorated. It was carefully built by a top domestic design team, and the materials used are environmentally friendly and non-polluting. So if you too buy this house, you can move in directly. As they walked and listened to Nana's introduction, Wang Yu also did some mental calculations. The villa was not very big overall, about 600 square meters, with a kitchen and dining room, living room, bathroom and a maid's room on the first floor. There were 3 bedrooms and a separate walk-in closet on the second floor, and the third floor, being the top floor, was a whole space of nearly 200 square meters. The overall design used floor-to-ceiling windows, with 360-degree unobstructed views and large pieces of glass installed everywhere. The ceiling in the upper area is designed like the night sky, and can be opened automatically at the touch of a button, so that you can lie in bed and admire the beautiful night sky. In the middle of the third floor is a round, custom-made leather sofa with a diameter of 3 meters, which can be used as a bed or a sofa. Nana took a remote control in her hand, pressed a button, and Wang Yu saw that the glass on the entire third floor turned black as if it had been infused with ink. The midday sun could no longer shine in, and a curtain 3 meters high and 5 meters long fell directly in front of the sofa. Mr. and Mrs. Wang, the design of the entire third floor is the essence of this villa. This area has the largest space in the villa and is large enough to accommodate various indoor activities. This is the private theater mode, and there are also bar mode, sports and fitness mode, and so on. As Nana introduced, Wang Yu became interested in this villa. After all, the one he bought didn't have such high technology. Zhenzhen and Lu Xiaoxiao were also immersed in the enjoyment of technology at this time. The more Sweetie looked, the more surprised she was. She felt that her brain was not enough to use. She had always been very thrifty because she had not had good living conditions since she was young. But the villa in front of her, which combined luxury and technology, was something she had never imagined before. Before the tour, Sweetie thought that a luxury house was just about having a lot of space, good decoration, and expensive furniture. But after the experience she just had, she finally understood the so-called happiness of the rich, which ordinary people really cannot imagine. After the various modes on the third floor were displayed, the sun shone in again. Mr. and Mrs. Wang, what do you think of this house? It's okay. I almost fell for it just now and thought that my 2,000 square meter house was no match for this villa. After switching between a few modes just now, Wang Yu came to his senses. These designs are, to put it bluntly, achieved through the glass on the third floor. Paired with the lighting and images, it looks really good, but it is very impractical. If you live there for a long time, you can only use 3 or 4 modes at most. After all, if I use the entire sports mode and then move the fitness equipment in, and then change it to the bar mode, won't all that fitness equipment have to be moved out again? Not to mention the obviously difficult to achieve planet mode, forest mode, and canyon mode in the background. Apart from the pictures, the cost of matching some models and potted plants could not be lower. But these are all disadvantages, and this design still has many advantages. The first thing Wang Yu thought of was the private theater mode, which was really good, especially the big soft couch, which could satisfy many people watching movies at a glance. Of course, just watching movies normally. Chapter 157, the head of the household writes about Tiantian. Wang Yu looked back at Tiantian beside him and asked softly, "Do you like it? If you like it, I'll buy it." Zhenzhen and Lu Xiaoxia, who had just recovered, were shocked again. This guy is really serious about wooing girls, buying a villa just like that. Nana's eyes also fell on the struggling Tiantian. She knew that whether she could close the deal today depended on the little girl in front of her. "Brother Yu, are you really going to buy it for me?" But this house is so expensive, I'm a little afraid to accept it." Tiantian's eyes were filled with surprise, nervousness, disbelief, and of course, more than anything, love for Wang Yu. "It looks okay to me, and it's not bad for you and Auntie to live here in the future. Besides, the place is close to work." "Oh yeah, do you have a driver's license?" Wang Yu suddenly thought, of course you need a luxury car with a luxury house, otherwise it would be a shame to leave the 3 parking spaces empty, and it would be even more a shame to leave Sweetie's little electric moped there. "No, I don't have a driving license, I've only been enrolled for 2 months, I've passed the first and second parts of the test, but I still have to wait a few days for the third part." Sweetie lowered her head, feeling that it was a shame to not have a driving license. "Don't worry. It won't take long. I'll go with you to buy a few cars later, and then you can say goodbye to your little electric car." Wang Yu had a smile on his face, completely ignoring Nana's envious gaze. "Xiaoyu, I really like this house, and Sweetie is too shy to say it, but I know my daughter, and she really likes it too." Zhenzhen came back to her senses, and the more she looked at Wang Yu, the more she liked him. But looking at her daughter's hesitant expression, she brazenly agreed to help her at that moment. "If you like it, Auntie, we'll buy it. Mr. Wang, the total price of this villa is 26.5 million. Do you want to pay the full amount or in installments?" Nana perked up immediately when she heard Wang Yu's words. "Pay the full amount, installment payments are too much trouble. If you pay the full amount, our company has a discount, you can get 500,000 off, so you can get it for 26 million. Mr. Wang, why don't you rest here for a while, I'll immediately notify someone to come over and handle the relevant procedures, you won't have to make another trip." After saying this, Nana Mai hurriedly went to find manager Zhou. She had to quickly prepare the contract, and then ask someone from the finance department to come over as well. This was the first time she had encountered such a decisive customer. Thinking about the commission for this house, Nana's pace quickened even more. Wang Yu watched Nana leave to prepare the materials, and then said to the others, "Then wait a while, if you're free, the 2 of you can look around the house." Tiantian heard that Wang Yu had spent 26 million just because of a word from her mother, and that brother Yu was really too good to me. Today's incident smacks of a financial transaction, but the 3 women in front of him don't think so. After all, this is not hearsay, but something that is actually happening right in front of them. Zhenzhen is so excited that she doesn't know what to say, thinking that she has worked hard for most of her life, and finally, relying on her daughter, she has turned her life around, and she is overjoyed. LV Xiaoxiao was jealous to the point of death, gritting her teeth and thinking that if she were just 20 years younger, Tian Shimen would definitely be wearing the green hat today. Wang Yu bought a villa, does that mean he is going to live with her? Could this be their love nest? But Mum is going to live here too, it feels so awkward, maybe we should let Mum rent a place to live. At this moment, if Zhenzhen knew what her own daughter was thinking, she would be so angry that she would spit blood. Manager Zhou looked at Nana, who had walked out quickly, and asked, "Nana, how did it go? Did you get it?" Manager, although it didn't look like Mr. Wang was very satisfied, he still bought it, and he paid the full price. Then Nana described what had just happened to Manager Zhou. When she heard that Wang Yu also had a villa of more than 2,000 square meters in Tiantian, manager Zhou felt that their own villa was really too small. Just take it. I'll notify someone to come over right away and take care of the paperwork. Manager Zhou couldn't hold back his smile at this point. Many people had looked at this villa and said it wasn't suitable because of the ingenious decoration style on the third floor. It was a nice villa, but with the maid's room, there were 4 rooms that could accommodate people, which was completely unable to meet the needs of a family. The villa has been on the market for almost 2 years now, and although it has been viewed by many people, no one has bought it. A few people have asked about the price, but when they heard that it was close to 30 million yuan, they all shook their heads and gave up on buying it. And those who can afford it, they don't like the villa because it's small and doesn't show off their status, so they all went to Tiantian to buy villas of more than 1,000 square meters. It's just sheer luck to have met a buyer like Wang Yu this time. After contacting the company, it wasn't long before a few handsome men and beautiful women arrived with the materials. Manager Zhou led them directly to the 3rd floor and saw Wang Yu and Tiantian standing on the balcony looking at the scenery. He couldn't help but envy them. Not only were they handsome, they were also young and rich. They had found girls not only with top looks, but also pure and charming little appearances that captured the hearts of others. Mr. Wang, we are all ready, you can come over and sign the contract. At this time, Zhenzhen and Lu Xiaoxiao also walked over. Just now, although Wang Yu said he would buy it, he had not paid for it yet. Now that the contract had been brought over, the two of them were very nervous. After all, this was a transaction of more than 20 million yuan. Well, just swipe the card. Saying this, Wang Yu handed over a bank card. After Nana took it, her hands trembled a little. The girl next to her, who was holding the credit card machine, was better off than her. After all, she didn't get a commission. If the transaction for this house was successful, she would get a commission of several 100,000 yuan, just like Nana, and she would probably not be so calm at this moment. Mr. Wang, the payment was successful. After Nana returned the card to Wang Yu, she couldn't help feeling elated in her heart. She had 260,000 yuan in her hands. After receiving the card, Wang Yu looked at Sweetie next to him and said, "Did you bring your ID?" "Yes, I did." Before Tiantian could say anything, Zhenzhen took out her daughter's ID card. When she heard that they were buying a house today, she not only brought her ID card, but also her household registration booklet. After taking Tiantian's ID card, Wang Yu looked at the photo of Tiantian when she was 16 years old and couldn't help smiling. The owner of this villa is this young lady, and the property ownership certificate is in Tiantian's name alone. Wang Yu looked at Tiantian with love in his eyes. I originally wanted to write Zhenzhen's name, but since this would-be mother-in-law has taken out her daughter's ID, let's just write Tiantian's name. After all, they can write whoever they want. As soon as Wang Yu said this, manager Zhou froze, Nana was stunned, and the few people who had rushed over to handle the property transfer also stood there dumbfounded. Chapter 158 When Zhong is arrested. At this time, Luo Qianqian could no longer be described as jealous. She would have preferred to go back in time 20 years ago, to have aborted her son and give birth to a daughter instead. Zhenzhen's eyes were narrowed into a line. She hadn't been this happy in 20 years. With this villa, her daughter's future would be set. She and Wang Yu were not married, so this was completely extramarital property, belonging solely to Tiantian. Tiantian was also incredulous when she heard this. Although Wang Yu had always said he would give her a house, she had never imagined it would be a single-family villa worth over 20 million yuan. No, brother Yu, you can't write my name on it, it's too expensive, write yours instead. Before she could finish speaking, Wang Yu interrupted. I already said it's for you, how can I write my name on it? We don't need to be so clear about the division of property. Then he turned back to Zhou, who was still standing there dumbfounded, and said, Hurry up and take care of it, we need to go buy some cars later. Half an hour later, Sweetie followed Wang Yu out of the villa dazedly holding a file bag. Auntie Mu, I did pretty well just now, didn't I? Hearing Wang Yu's words, Zhenzhen finally reacted and realized that he had deliberately brought the couple over. Auntie, the better off you and Sweetie get, the more uncomfortable they will be, isn't it so? Saying this, Wang Yu pointed at LV Xiaoxiao, who was still giving them a long look from outside the car. Xiao Yu, you're thoughtful, Auntie thanks you. After Zhenzhen figured it out, she felt refreshed, and after all these years, she finally got the better of those two bitches. At this time, LV Kai pulled Tian Shimen and looked at the three people driving away, speechless for a long time. You have to know that Tian has found such a rich boyfriend. At that time, her family would never bully them like this. LV Kai Kai was regretting it to death at this time. Tiantian, on the other hand, felt even more remorseful than she did. After all, Tiantian was his own flesh and blood. But he had never once visited her over the years, and he had never even paid child support. Even if he forced her to support him in his old age now, it wouldn't do any good. After all, he didn't care about a few thousand yuan a month in child support. Just as Wang Yu was spending money lavishly with Tiantian and her daughter, a minor incident occurred in Zhou City, but the repercussions of this incident were significant. At this time, Zhou Tingjian drove out of Zhou City with a dozen comrades in arms in 3 military vehicles, slowly driving towards an increasingly remote mountainous area. The 5 kidnappers in the car felt something was wrong from the moment they saw Zhou Tingjian take them away in his military uniform. The fewer cars they saw on the road, the worse it got. The soldiers escorting them next to them were all holding real weapons, so they were afraid that they would be shot. Yesterday they did not reveal their intention to kidnap. At most, it was considered a fight and brawl. When they were arrested by the police, the 5 of them were not very worried. They had encountered this situation many times before, and at most, they would only go to jail for 10 days or half a month. However, at this moment, the 5 kidnappers felt the seriousness of the situation, and when Zhou could not sit still inside the hotel. From last night until now, he has been unable to contact the kidnappers. He learned through inquiries that the 5 men were taken away by the police. He didn't think much of it at first, but when the military truck appeared, when Zhou felt that things had gone beyond his imagination. He never would have thought that kidnapping Wang Yu would alarm the military. What Wen Xin didn't know was that the person inquiring about the news simply didn't dare to tell him Zhou Tingjian's identity information, and just vaguely said a few words. At the moment, he had no idea how much trouble his actions had caused the Wen family. In a dimly lit room, one of the kidnappers was brought in. Zhou Tingjian looked at the person in front of him, his eyes cold and unblinking, and after staring at him for a few minutes, he asked, "Go ahead, which organization are you from, where did you enter the country from, and why did you attack a serving soldier?" The kidnapper, who had been interrogated many times, was immediately dumbfounded. The scene in front of him was too unexpected. It's not supposed to start with questions about name, age, gender, where you live, and so on. The questions asked by this person in front of him are so intimidating. Is this a criminal interrogation? It feels like a terrorist interrogation. Zhou Tingjian looked at the kidnapper in front of him with a calm face and didn't say a word. He immediately realized that this guy in front of him had received training in this area. Apply to your superior for permission to use special means. Yes. A soldier got up, saluted, and then left the room directly. The kidnapper was startled by Zhou Tingjian's words, a chill rising, and he immediately felt that something was wrong. "Comrade, I am Lu Hong, a person from the town below Zhou City. I didn't come from abroad, I don't have any organization, and I didn't know that you were an active duty soldier." Lu Hong was about to cry at this point, and he hated in his heart the person who issued the task, telling him to do this kind of thing for 10 million. This is not as simple as being shot, and it is possible that the whole family will go to jail. At that moment, he didn't care about the rules or not, and he told everything he knew. After listening to him, Zhou Tingjian didn't believe his words either, and sent someone to verify the information according to Lu Hong's confession. As for what they said about receiving 10 million yuan to kidnap Wang Yu, he didn't believe it at all. The 5 people were obviously coming for him at the time, and if Wang Yu didn't intervene, no one was expected to bother with him. Lu Hong's story was either thought up in advance or these people had also been deceived. There must be someone above them, and Zhou Tingjian reported his suspicions to his superiors at the moment. The leaders of the reporting unit attached great importance to Zhou Tingjian's report, and they would rather kill the wrong person than let him go. What's more, the other kidnappers, who were interrogated separately, also confessed to the things they had done. Several people had taken human lives in their hands. Even if it was really a kidnapping targeting Wang Yu as they said, then this case is not a small case. This kind of thing is supposed to be handed over to the local police to deal with, but since it involves military personnel, then this man they have to investigate from beginning to end. After the order was issued, the war machine began to operate. Within just a few hours, the underground organization in Zhou City had suffered a tragic blow. They found that the usual backstage and whatnot were completely useless. No matter if your connections were in the city or the province, they were completely useless at this time. Batches of people involved in the underworld were arrested, and teams of armed police were roaming the streets of Zhou. Wen Xin, who was staying in the hotel, had not figured out what was going on before he was arrested directly by the military. Wang Yu didn't know what had happened at this time. After spending more than 1 million yuan to buy a car for each of Tiantian and Zhenzhen, he returned to the hospital with Tiantian. It took more than an hour to complete the diagnosis and treatment of the afternoon patients, and he wanted to take Tiantian out to eat something good. But before he could even leave the hospital, he was blocked by Sumu. "Brother Yu, let's have dinner together tonight?" Sumu issued an invitation to Wang Yu as if she couldn't see Sweetie. "I'm busy." Wang Yu was decisive in his refusal, not giving Sumu the slightest chance. Sweetie, on the other hand, stood behind Wang Yu and made faces at Sumu, continuing her provocation. She was very wary of this beautiful doctor, Sweetie, who coveted her brother Yu. Chapter 159, Sumu scares the little nurse. Sumu looked at the little nurse behind Wang Yu, her lungs about to explode with anger. Her towering breasts rose and fell violently, and her almond-shaped eyes stared at the two in front of her with a tone like a resentful woman. "Wang Yu, you have to go today, whether you want to or not." This beautiful doctor in front of him had a murderous expression, and Wang Yu felt a little guilty. He had indeed been very rude just now. But he really doesn't have anything going on. After work, he was thinking about eating sweet treats tonight, and now you're coming over. What's going on? "Mumu, I really have something going on today, how about tomorrow?" Wang Yu said tentatively. "No, it's today. Women nowadays are all so brave. If you tell me to go, I'll go, but then I'll lose face." "Okay, but I'll bring Sweetie. A husband who can bend and stretch is a good husband. And tonight's dinner with Sweetie is solved as well." "Whatever, but Nan Nan and his brother are also coming tonight, and there's something I need to tell you." After saying that, Sumu turned around and left. Wang Yu and Tiantian met each other's eyes. The little nurse didn't have any opinions and relied on her boyfriend to make the decisions. And when Wang Yu heard what Sumu said, he felt that there was probably something going on, so he also went over at that moment. Along the way, Sumu didn't speak to Wang Yu, but instead pulled Tiantian behind him and threatened her in a strange voice, which made the little girl feel a bit broken inside. "Sweetie, you know that Wang Yu has a wife, right? The guy just had a wedding last month. Sweetie, I heard that when a mistress is caught, she will be stripped naked and photographed. That colleague of mine from pediatrics, Xiaohong. Sweetie, do you know what piggybacking is? I watched a movie at home yesterday called 3D What Group. Let me tell you about the heroine in it. Sweetie, the hospital will deal with this kind of thing together when it is discovered, and it will be announced throughout the hospital. When I first came to the hospital, the director of the men's department, Shiman, and his little nurse, Pan Nini. Tian. Sumu kept talking, giving examples, and the more he talked, the more explicit he got, and the louder his voice got. Wang Yu looked in the rearview mirror and saw that Tiantian's little face was white with fear, and he wanted to stop the car and throw Sumu out. I said, "Miss Su, that's enough, is it funny to scare little girls?" Hearing Wang Yu's warning, and seeing that the little nurse was next to the door, far away from him, Sumu's mood immediately improved a lot. "No, I'm not. I'm just afraid that someone will trick Sweetie and she'll suffer, so I'm giving her a heads up." Wang Yu rolled her eyes and didn't bother to say anything else to Sumu. This woman was too troublesome. Every day, she didn't know what she was thinking, and there was none of the cold, aloof feeling she had when they first met. When they arrived in the private room, Zhou Tingjian and his sister were already waiting. "Who is this?" Nan Nan asked curiously, looking at Sweetie, who had followed Wang Yu. "Colleague. My friend." Wang Yu and Sumu said at the same time. Sumu didn't want others to know about the relationship between Wang Yu and Sweetie, so she directly said that she was her friend. Wang Yu, on the other hand, didn't bother to explain so much. After all, letting this beautiful police officer know about his own affairs would also be a minor nuisance. Nan Nan didn't say anything after hearing this. Although she didn't know when Sumu had made a friend, this was someone else's private matter, so she didn't ask too many questions. Moreover, for this dinner today, it was her younger brother who asked her to help Sumu invite Wang Yu. As for why her younger brother didn't ask Wang Yu out himself, she didn't ask. Zhou Tingjian seemed to be on some kind of mission these past 2 days, and Wang Yu was probably involved. After some small talk, Sumu briefly introduced Sweetie, and then they ordered their food and ate. The meal was pretty normal, with everyone chatting and laughing. Even Sweetie had a good time chatting with Nan Nan. However, Wang Yu felt a little awkward. Since Zhou Tingjian had entered, he had been observing him. Several times during the meal, Wang Yu tried to talk to him about something, but the guy always changed the subject after a few words. Could it be that this guy blamed me for Sumu rejecting him? Zhou Tingjian didn't care about Wang Yu's awkwardness. After Wen Xin was captured by the army, he quickly realized that he couldn't hide what he had done. He was not as ignorant as the 5 kidnappers, and immediately knew that his situation was not that simple. Wen Xin, who came from a prominent family in the capital, quickly came up with an excuse for himself. When Zhou Tingjian began to interrogate him, Wen Xin told him everything. The only difference was that the excuse he used was too reasonable. Wen Xin did not deny paying someone to kidnap Wang Yu, and simply admitted that he was the one who did it. After investigating Wen Xion's identity, Zhou Tingjian thought he was a big fish, but he never expected that although kidnapping Wang Yu was illegal, it was reasonable. He just wanted these people, but their identities were a bit too shameful. I asked someone to kidnap Wang Yu, but it was a family matter. Even if I broke the law, the police are responsible. I don't know where I offended the military. Wen Xion's attitude was as arrogant as ever, although he was pretending at this time to set the stage for what he was about to say. What family matters? And endangering the safety of the people? Since we've stumbled upon this matter, we will definitely see it through to the end. I advise you not to hide anything. Your background is impressive, but it won't do you any good here. Zhou Tingjian's words were full of threats, but they were also the truth. The attack on a serving member of the special forces was something the Wen family in the capital could not afford to withstand. Fine, they say family secrets should be kept within the family, but since we've come this far, there's nothing more to hide. Wen Xin looked sad, as if he couldn't bear to remember the past. That brat Wang Yu is no good, deceiving my cousin's feelings and getting her pregnant without getting married. Wen Xion's words left Zhou Tingjian speechless. He had just entrusted his sister Mumu to Wang Yu, and then heard such explosive news. Who is your cousin, and is what you're saying true? We will definitely investigate this matter. My cousin is Wen Xin, the chairman of the Wenxia group in Tiantian City. You can investigate this matter as much as you like, but what I said is absolutely true. Wen Xin angrily pounded on the armrest of the stool. Even if your cousin is pregnant with Wang Yu's child without being married, this is a matter of their relationship, and it is not a reason for you to kidnap him. Of course it's not that simple. When we heard the news, the 3 of us were surprised but not angry. You have to understand that my cousin is already 45 years old, and to be able to find a place to settle down and have her own child, we are also happy for her. Chapter 160, Wang Yu, who was being investigated again in secret. Wen Xion's eyes were a little moist as he spoke, looking like a brother and sister who are deeply in love. Then suddenly his face changed and he yelled angrily. That bastard Wang Yu is practically inhuman. After some investigation these past few days, I discovered that this bastard actually has 2 women on the side, and one of them is pregnant. If this isn't cheating on my cousin's feelings, is it wrong for me, as her younger brother, to find someone to tie him up and beat him up? After a loud and exhausting venting of anger, Wen Xion's hands struggled with all their might, as if he wanted to tear Wang Yu apart. After hearing this, Zhou Tingjian felt bad for the whole person. During his contact with Wang Yu over the past few days, he also knew that this guy had a girlfriend. At the time, he felt that no matter who his girlfriend was, she could not compare to his own sister Mumu. But he definitely never imagined that Wang Yu's girlfriend was actually 45 years old and was even pregnant. All of this is fine, but the fact that you two have a good relationship can transcend the boundaries of age, and I admire your infatuation with Wang Yu. But damn it, what's the deal with the 2 women you have outside? No wonder someone's brother wants to fix you. Isn't this obvious bullying? Thinking about this, Zhou Tingjian's good feelings towards Wang Yu instantly vanished. He felt that he had a responsibility and obligation to save sister Mumu. Wang Yu is definitely a big pit of fire. But before going, he definitely had to investigate Wang Yu properly. After all, has Wen Xin not confirmed all this? What if I'm fooled and it's embarrassing? He waved someone to take Wen Xin away, and then Zhou Tingjian called his sister. Sister, there's something I want you to help with. What is it? I can't say anything specific right now, but can you use the public security system to investigate Wang Yu? Why? Why do you want to investigate Dr. Wang? Sister, I really can't say anything right now, so can you help me investigate first? This is very important. Okay, I'll pull up his file online first, and then ask a colleague in his hometown to help look into it. After hanging up the phone, Nan pulled Wang Yu's information from the system and looked it over. She felt that there was nothing wrong with it. The only minor problem was that the guy had gotten divorced a few months ago, and the divorce agreement stated that he would get nothing. At the time, she felt a little strange, but there was nothing wrong with that. After all, there were so many divorced people. After seeing Wang Yu's hometown address, Nan Nan launched an investigation into Wang Yu through the police system. However, in just 2 hours, Wang Yu's information was gathered from various sources and sent to Nan Nan. I have to say that the police system is very efficient. There is nothing to investigate about Wang Yu before he graduated, and there is not much difference from the file. But the information about this guy in recent months is really bad. After looking at it for a while, Nan Nan found out why Wang Yu got divorced. He also learned about the emotional entanglements between Wang Yu, Wen Liang, Wen Xin, and Chen Yuding. Nan Nan, who had never met Wen Xin, felt from her own judgment that this must be Wang Yu's revenge on Wen Liang and Chen Yuding. Then she saw that this guy had actually held a wedding in his hometown recently, marrying a girl from the same village. A few days later, he held another wedding in Suzhou City, marrying the Sun family's eldest daughter. Now this Sun family's eldest daughter is also pregnant with his child. But the system data clearly stated that this guy is currently divorced, and he actually dared to marry 2 girls publicly, but he didn't get a marriage certificate. Nan Nan, who had watched the video about Zhang San's legal knowledge, now deeply understood the case that teacher Luo had mentioned. Zhang San had held 8 weddings and married 8 wives, but he had never registered any of them, just to make you all jealous. Since Zhang San and his 8 wives had never registered their marriages, they did not constitute bigamy. Thinking about this, Nan Nan suddenly felt that it was really dangerous for her best friend to fall for such a man. Taking out her phone, Nan Nan immediately dialed Zhou Tingjian's number. "Sister, have you found anything yet?" "Brother, I've made a major discovery." "Tell me more, sister." "Wang Yu is a scumbag. He's had 2 weddings and is having an affair with another woman. The kicker is that he's still not married. Isn't there a Wen Xin who is the chairwoman of the Wen Group in Tiantian City?" "Yes, how did you know?" "Listen to me, little brother, this woman is so miserable, she is pregnant with Wang Yu's child." After half an hour or so, Nan Nan told the whole story of the grudges and grievances between Wang Yu, Wen Liang, Chen Yuding, and Wen Xin. It was interspersed with a lot of personal opinions and contempt for Wang Yu. After hanging up the phone, Zhou Tingjian let out a deep breath. What a load of shit. He still felt very sympathetic towards Wang Yu being cuckolded and divorced, but Wang Yu's actions afterwards had simply shaken his worldview. It was so ruthless, marrying a woman 15 years his senior just to get back at him. And he really played around outside, holding 2 weddings and not getting a certificate? He really studied law well. It seemed that this matter was not directed at himself, so Zhou Tingjian immediately called to report the results of his investigation. The higher-ups were also speechless about this matter, and then let Zhou Tingjian handle it himself. After thinking about it for a while, he told his sister to send someone to pick up the 5 kidnappers and Wen Zhong. He really didn't want to get involved in this kind of thing anymore. As for why he asked Su Mu to help arrange a dinner with Wang Yu tonight, one reason was that at the time, Zhou Tingjian wanted to see how Su Mu and Wang Yu's current relationship was going. The other reason was that he was so angry that he directly blocked Wang Yu's phone number and deleted it, so he couldn't get in touch even if he wanted to make an appointment. Nan Nan followed him with the idea of protecting her best friend. So from the moment Wang Yu entered, Zhou Tingjian kept staring at him. As for Nan Nan, she had already decided that she would have a good chat with Su Mu in the evening, telling her everything that Wang Yu had done, so that Su Mu would see Wang Yu's true face. At this moment, Wang Yu, who really couldn't stand Zhou Tingjian's gaze, finally couldn't help but ask. "I said, brother, you've been looking at me for a long time, what do you really mean?" "Not much, I just want to take a good look at how there can be people like you in the world." Zhou Tingjian didn't say anything nice when he spoke. "What do you mean by that?" Wang Yu asked curiously. "It means nothing. I'm warning you, you better stay away from Sister Mumu, or I'll fix you." Zhou Tingjian said this and gave Wang Yu a fierce glare. Holy shit! Did this guy come to his senses and prepare to pursue Su Mu again? This is a good thing. Wang Yu didn't care about Zhou Tingjian's attitude at all, and was even a little happy about it. Su Mu had caused him a lot of trouble these past 2 days. "If you figured it out, do you want me to help you?" Wang Yu said in a low voice. "No." Zhou Tingjian firmly refused. "Brother, I'm a professional in this area." Wang Yu obviously didn't want to give up. "Well, I know. But really, no." Upon hearing this, Zhou Tingjian gave Wang Yu a deep look and knew that what he said was true. If he helped, he might really be able to woo Sister Mumu, but thinking about his character, he decided not to,